Chapter 3088. It's your turn. 1. Before the young handsome boy could figure out, the three children refused to continue the topic and urged them to quickly take them to go bungee jumping. The best place for bungee jumping, Saint Rouet had already found out through the internet. It was on a mountain called Daylily. On the way, the more the little handsome boy thought about it, the more depressed he became. He wanted to ask about his temporary doubts several times, but the three of them ignored him at all, which made him quite helpless. The little senior brother thought that he was beautiful, but he was defeated in front of the three little children, which made him very conflicted. However, he also confirmed the identity of the old grandmother that the three little children were talking about from the old ancestor's mouth. It was just as he had guessed. As long as he thought of a narcissistic old woman being called an old grandmother, his heart actually felt a little excited. Then, the little handsome boy glanced at the third baby, who had his eyes closed as if he was resting, and his heart was in a dilemma again. Although a certain woman was called an old granny, it seemed that he, a young and beautiful little handsome man, was not treated well either. At this moment, he would never have thought that the ancestor he respected was not any better than him. However, the old ancestor had already warned him before that he would take these three little babies as his disciples, but he had not succeeded yet, so he had carefully warned him not to provoke them and to coax them. It had to be said that when he first heard this news, the little handsome man was quite shocked. Of course, he was not shocked that the old ancestor wanted to take in disciples, but that the old ancestor, such a famous person in the ancient martial arts world, had not managed to get the three in front of him. If the people in the clan knew about this, they would be furious. Thinking of this, the little handsome man couldn't help but look at the old ancestor again. He had a very complicated feeling in his heart. "You brat, focus on driving. Why are you looking at me?" Receiving the little handsome boy's gaze, the old ancestor said with a slight displeasure, "Ugh, I can't even look." The little handsome boy was a little speechless. Was the old ancestor shy? "The old man is shy, little guy. Don't look around." At this moment, a voice came from the back seat, confirming the little handsome boy's guess. Although he didn't know who spoke, the word old man from the other side still made him confused for a long time. Old grandpa. Was this how the ancestor addressed him? The handsome boy glanced at the middle-aged man again, but he quickly looked away. Seeing that his ancestor wasn't angry when he heard the honorific title of an old man, the little handsome man couldn't help but be amazed. Fortunately, the handsome boy quickly put away his curiosity and focused on driving. It wasn't that he didn't want to think about it anymore, but he was afraid that if he continued to be curious, the old ancestor would be angry from embarrassment. After driving for nearly an hour, they arrived at the forgotten mountain. At the foot of the mountain, after buying the tickets, the handsome boy took the old man and three children into the elevator. However, just as he was about to press the elevator floor, a small hand beat him to it and pressed a number key. Then, the elevator started. Looking at the number of layers pressed by a certain hand, the little handsome boy's mouth was wide open, and he couldn't react for a long time. However, his back was facing the middle-aged man, so the middle-aged man did not see his expression. Oh my God! Directly to the highest floor. This was going to be a hit. The little handsome boy was silent, not knowing what to say. The elevator had a total of 10 floors. Other than the first floor, the other 9 floors all had bungee jumping points, but the distance between each floor was about 1,000 meters. The highest floor had a bungee jumping range of more than 8,000 meters. More than 8,000 meters. It was several times higher than a 100-story building. Just thinking about that distance made the little handsome boy's legs cramp. Although he liked bungee jumping and the thrill of it, it wasn't that exciting yet. More importantly, so far, no one had ever dared to bungee jump on the top floor. Only those who had lived long enough would go bungee jumping on the top floor. Ordinary people would have been scared half to death. What should he do now? The little handsome boy was at a loss, but he didn't dare to press the other levels. He couldn't be less courageous than a baby, right? Sob. After silently crying in his heart for a while, the little handsome boy gathered his courage and turned around. He forced a smile and said, "Little guy, let's go to the second floor to play, okay?" Second floor? That's so boring. Saint Rouet did not even think and said directly, "What about the third level?" Seeing that the other party didn't agree, the little handsome boy continued, "I'm not going." Rouet's opposed. "Fourth level. I can't go any higher." The little handsome boy made up his mind and said, "I'm going all out. I've only played to the fifth level." He had to give him some time to adapt so that he wouldn't be too high-end all of a sudden and his heart wouldn't be able to take it. The three children shook their heads in unison. At this moment, the middle-aged man also felt that something was amiss. He asked, "What's wrong?" "Ancestor, the three of them are going to the top floor." The handsome boy said with a bitter face. "Oh, then go." The middle-aged man quickly said. This was truly the case of the ignorant being fearless. After hearing his ancestor's words, the little handsome boy couldn't help but curse in his heart. However, he also knew that his ancestor didn't know much about bungee jumping, but now was not the time to explain it in detail to his ancestor. The little handsome boy was very regretful at this moment. He should have explained it to his ancestor earlier, but now, as if sensing his thoughts, the little handsome boy immediately received the disdainful gazes of the three little children. Suddenly, he did not dare to speak carelessly. At the same time, the elevator stopped to the top floor. When the elevator door opened, the three of them immediately rushed out. "Yo, there's really someone who dares to come and court death." As soon as the middle-aged man stepped out of the elevator, he heard a surprised voice. What was the meaning of this? The middle-aged man turned to look at the handsome boy and asked with his eyes. The little handsome boy's eyes drifted away, not daring to look at the middle-aged man. This time, the middle-aged man's reaction was slow, but he also felt that something was wrong. Who could tell him what it meant by someone who dared to come and court death? It's just bungee jumping, right? Could it be that his life was in danger? The middle-aged man was very depressed, but seeing that the three of them had already run out of the elevator, he did not dare to ask too much to show his ignorance. So he could only brace himself and walk out of the elevator. The little handsome boy's heart trembled as he followed behind, not even daring to look at the old ancestor. The one who spoke just now was a man in his 30s. When the middle-aged man saw him clearly, the three of them had already greeted him politely. The middle-aged man was a little jealous when he saw the three of them being so enthusiastic about a certain man. "You bastard!" He had known the three children for so long, but he had never seen them so enthusiastic about him. With a dark expression, the middle-aged man took the initiative to walk to the side of the man who spoke and said loudly, "We're going bungee jumping." "No problem." The man's eyes lit up as he looked at the middle-aged man and said excitedly, "Ever since their company started bungee jumping here, no one had come to his floor to bungee jump." It could be said that he had been waiting for this day for so long that the flowers had wilted. Now that there was finally someone who was not afraid of death and came to challenge this level, how could he not be excited? Chapter 3089. It's your turn. 2. Unfortunately, while the staff member was excited, the little handsome boy who heard his ancestors' words was deeply worried. However, in front of outsiders, he did not dare to remind the old ancestor that this level was very dangerous. Otherwise, where would the old ancestor's face be when he said this? The staff member quickly took out a contract for the middle-aged man to sign. The middle-aged man looked at the contract in the other party's hand, and his heart trembled. What kind of contract was this? Seeing that the most eye-catching title on the contract was the guarantee of no responsibility for accidental death, the middle-aged man suddenly felt uncomfortable and his heart sank. At this moment, if he still couldn't feel anything, then he had really lived all these years in the stomach of a dog. Sign it. Sign it. Quickly sign it. After you sign this letter of responsibility, you can bungee jump. Seeing that the middle-aged man was stunned, the staff member tried to coax him. Looking at the other party's expression, it was as if Grandmother Wolf was trying to abduct Little Red Riding Hood. The middle-aged man's expression was inexplicable. Could he go back on his word? Just as the middle-aged man was thinking about this, Rue Sheng grabbed the letter of responsibility and handed it to the little handsome man. "You sign it, quickly sign it." They asked for an adult signature, or he'll sign it. The little handsome boy was sweating profusely. Why did she have to find him? Whoa, he didn't want to sign it, could he? He was still young and didn't want to die yet. Although this level of bungee jumping might not necessarily be a problem, it was really too high up. To sign this thing before bungee jumping, even a normal person would not be able to do it. After all, this was too unlucky. But if he did not sign it, he would not know what to do in front of Rui Sheng's expectant eyes. Looking at his ancestor helplessly, the little handsome boy wanted to cry but had no tears. We don't want to sign this, but we still want to play. The middle-aged man said domineeringly after receiving the little handsome boy's pleading gaze. He also felt that signing that thing was too unlucky. He hadn't even played yet. Why did he think of death first? Can't you just let me have fun? I'm sorry, but the company has a rule that if you don't sign the letter of responsibility, you can't bungee jump on this floor. The staff member could only say, "Oomph. If you don't want to play, then don't." The middle-aged man snorted. This was exactly what he wanted. But when he said he didn't want to play, the three little kids wouldn't do it. If you won't let us play, then we want leave today. As the big brother, Rui Sheng spoke out the thoughts of the three brothers. Saint Rui, it's not that I don't want you to play, but he doesn't. The middle-aged man pointed at the staff member and said innocently, "Shameless." He was truly shameless. Hearing this, the staff member cursed in his heart, but he put on an innocent face and said, "The company has its rules. You can't blame me for this. If I don't blame you, who else should I blame?" The middle-aged man roared. This was definitely the real-life version of the villain complaining first. The staff member felt wronged and turned his eyes to the three of them. "Little guy, I really can't let you play if your family doesn't sign it. Please understand our job, and long live your understanding." "Yes." Saint Rui nodded his head to show that he understood. He then looked at the middle-aged man and said, "Just sign it. Why are you thinking so much?" Sensing that the little boy was a little dissatisfied, the middle-aged man could not help but look at the little handsome boy with an inquiring look. However, the little handsome boy avoided his eyes and never looked at him in the eye. He was so angry that he almost cursed out loud. Fortunately, the middle-aged man was prideful and did not curse out loud. Then, under the anticipation of the three clear eyes, he signed his name on the letter of responsibility. Seeing that he had signed it, the staff member immediately smiled. "We can play now," the smiling staff member reminded him. As soon as he finished speaking, other staff members came to help them put on their equipment. Because the three babies were still young, according to the rules, they had to be accompanied by their parents before they could bungee jump. Therefore, they were wearing matching equipment. The two pieces of equipment, one big and one small, were connected together. However, now that there were three babies, one of them would always be left alone. Seeing this, the staff was a little worried. "They'll play by myself." Seeing that the staff was in a difficult position, Saint Rui was very understanding. "No, this is not in accordance with the rules." The staff member immediately refused. "Rules are dead, but people are alive," Saint Rui reminded. The staff member still did not dare to agree. Saint Rui was a little angry. He glared at the staff with his fire-breathing eyes and threatened, "If you don't let me play by myself, it'll just jump down from here. By then, your company will be famous." Oh my God, the little boy was actually threatening him. The staff member was confused and did not know what to say. After some thought, the staff member gave an idea. "Don't be rash. You can wait for them to finish their dance before playing with you. One more time. Do you think they'll dare to jump a second time?" Saint Rui sneered. His clear eyes were full of contempt. Rui Zi and Rui Xiao nodded in agreement, while the two who were looked down upon were extremely depressed. Needless to say, the middle-aged man and the little handsome boy also knew that they were the people who Saint Rui said would not dare to dance a second time. But were they really that cowardly? The middle-aged man was not convinced and said, "Saint Rui, after I'm done dancing with Rui Xin, they'll play with you again. It's just bungee jumping. What's the big deal?" The little handsome boy didn't dare to say that. In fact, he didn't even dare to jump once, but now he was in a difficult position. If his friends knew that he went to the top of the forgotten Serene Mountain, but took the elevator down, he would lose all his face. More importantly, if he dared to say that he didn't want to play anymore, he was afraid that his ancestor and the three little kids wouldn't let him off. So he could only drive the duck to the perch. Now that he heard his ancestor say that, he really admired his ancestor. An idol. The old ancestor was definitely his idol. After the middle-aged man finished speaking, although Saint Rouet still doubted his integrity, he still nodded in agreement. However, he was quite depressed in his heart. You're too young to play to your heart's content. When would he really grow up? I really want to grow up. With the desire to grow up, Rouet, Sheng accompanied the two teams of fully armed challengers to the edge of the cliff. At a glance, the cliff was so deep that he couldn't see the bottom. Instantly, the middle-aged man had a bad feeling. This place was so high. Before this, he had not noticed that they had already reached the top of the mountain. But now he could not even play dumb. Damn it! Would he still be alive after jumping from such a high place? No wonder he had to sign the letter of responsibility. At that moment, the middle-aged man understood everything. He turned to look at the handsome boy who was standing beside him, his face already pale. Then, he looked at the excited children. The middle-aged man wanted to retreat, but it was like a fishbone stuck in his throat, and he could not say it. This place is so high up. Aren't you afraid? The middle-aged man couldn't help but ask. You're afraid? If you're already so scared from the roller coaster and Ferris wheel, then it's even more so here. Rouet expressed his understanding. The middle-aged man's face darkened after hearing that. Could this matter not be brought up again? He really wanted to go crazy. Don't be afraid. It'll protect you. Knowing that the middle-aged man was afraid, Rouet considerately touched his head and said, feeling that he was being touched on the head like a puppy again, the middle-aged man roared in his heart. He was not afraid. He was just afraid of heights, all right? In addition, to be protected by a little boy, this feeling was too overwhelming. He wanted to cry. It'll protect you too. Rouet, who also felt the little handsome boy's body trembling, also imitated his brother and touched the little handsome boy's head. Thank you. The little handsome boy wanted to cry, but had no tears. This feeling of being protected by someone really didn't feel good. Of course, if the other party was not a little boy, he might still be able to accept it. But the other party was a little boy. Don't dawdle. Hurry up and jump down. At this time, Rouet Sheng, who was a little impatient from waiting, urged. The middle-aged man took a deep breath. He was going all out. Then he closed his eyes, tightened his arms around Rouet, and jumped down. The speed of their fall was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, the old and the young disappeared without a trace. However, the echo of the scream was clearly transmitted into the ears of the few people on the mountaintop. When the little handsome man heard this familiar scream, his legs and stomach went soft. It's your turn, Rouet Sheng said to the little handsome boy. The little handsome boy stammered. Could he say that his legs had gone soft? Seeing him stammering and stammering, Rouet Sheng smiled understandingly. Then he lifted his leg and kicked the little handsome boy's butt. Then the little handsome boy fell down the cliff with his head facing down. Hearing the ear-piercing scream, Saint Rouet clapped his hands as if he had just completed a major event in his life. The staff member looked at Rouet's actions, and his mouth twitched. This child is really bad. Don't think he didn't see that the two adults didn't want to jump at all, but they didn't want to lose face. Sigh. At this moment, the staff member's mood was very complicated. Half an hour later, the middle-aged man returned to the top of the mountain. He, who felt like he had just survived a disaster, was in a very low state at the moment, as if he had been stimulated by something. His entire person was listless and listless. What's wrong? Did you get cooked? Saint Rouet looked at him and asked in confusion. This brat. After a moment of silence, the middle-aged man did not make a sound. However, when he thought about how he had to beat again, his heart clenched in panic. Whoa, just now, he thought that he was about to die. The feeling of his blood flowing backward and his heart beating uncontrollably was really not good. What made him feel even worse was that he was scared half to death. But the little Rouet in his arms was fine. When she was hanging in the air, That little fellow actually had the mood to comfort him. This was really comparing people to milk babies. It was really infuriating. The middle-aged man, who was emitting a faint sorrow, stared at the two babies in front of him for a long time with a complicated gaze. It was only when the handsome little boy and Ruai's returned that he snapped back to his senses. Seeing his junior's pale face and being carried back to the top of the mountain unconsciously, he felt a lot better. Fortunately, he was not the most embarrassing person. However, when he saw the lively Ruaizi standing beside the little handsome man, his mood became bad again. Up to this point, he still couldn't understand how these three could be so bold. Were they not afraid at all? Was there anything in this world that could make them afraid? Chapter 3090, they really put in a lot of effort. 1. The answer was no. The third child had already been brought to his territory by his father for a few rounds. He had seen everything before, so why would he be afraid of bungee jumping at this height? Not only was he not afraid, but he also found it quite fun. Unfortunately, the middle-aged man did not know about this, so he could only look at the three of them with a faint sorrow and resentment, especially Saint Ray. The middle-aged man's eyes clearly said, "Dear, stop playing. It's not fun at all." Saint Ray ignored the pleading look in the middle-aged man's eyes and said, "I'm the only one who didn't get to play. It's a pity that a certain someone won't let us play by ourselves." After saying that, Ruai shyly glanced at the innocent staff member who was shot. Suddenly, the staff member's whole body trembled. Then, he received a sharp glare from the middle-aged man and a deep resentment from the other party's body. A certain someone who was unjustly accused also felt very aggrieved. What could he do? What had he done to deserve such injustice? At this time, the middle-aged man took a big step forward and pulled the staff to the side to negotiate. The three of them looked at this scene and secretly laughed. They walked over to the unconscious handsome boy and prepared to watch him. Perhaps the three pairs of eyes were too hot. The unconscious little handsome boy woke up not long after. When he woke up, the little handsome boy was still a little confused and asked in a daze, "I'm dead?" "Yes, you're scared to death." Ruai couldn't help but roll his eyes as he threatened. When the little handsome boy heard this, his originally dazed eyes suddenly dimmed a little. Then he burst into tears. "Woo, why am I so scared? My life has just begun. I haven't even gotten married and had children yet. How can the heavens be so cruel? It was not fair. It was too unfair. I want to file a complaint. I want to protest." The little handsome boy cried and howled, his mouth still shouting nonstop. The three of them listened to his mumbling, and their eyes widened. Their beautiful little faces were full of disbelief. "Who is that? We don't know him." He really didn't know her. Turning his head, the three little faces were slightly red. They were all embarrassed for the little guy. The middle-aged man and the staff not far away naturally heard the little handsome guy's mumbling. Suddenly, the middle-aged man's old face turned red, and he wanted to find a hole to hide in. The staff members present all had their mouths wide open, and their expressions were the same as the three, even a little exaggerated. In the end, the middle-aged man couldn't take it anymore. When he saw that the little handsome man was not going to stop, he stepped forward and punched the little handsome man's head. The little handsome man felt a pain in his head and looked up angrily at the murderer who had attacked him. When he saw him, he was stunned and said, "Old ancestor, are you dead too?" "Woo, luckily I'm not alone. Dye your head. We're all alive and well." The middle-aged man roared angrily. We didn't die." The little handsome boy was a little dumbfounded. Tears welled up in his eyes, but he didn't dare to let them fall. "He didn't die," the middle-aged man said in an unpleasant tone. "Then why did the little boys say that they were dead?" Looking at the calm little boy, the little handsome boy did not dare to ask his question. However, the middle-aged man also understood what he meant. He glared at him and said loudly, "I'm just teasing you." Was she teasing him? The little handsome boy was so depressed. Since when did he become the object of others' teasing? The ones who teased him were the three little kids. This fact hurt his self-esteem too much. Sob. Thinking of this, the little handsome man choked up again. However, in the face of the furious ancestor, The three people who were watching the show, and the staff present, the little handsome man really did not dare to cry again. However, he also knew that he had lost all his face today, and the main culprits who caused him to be so miserable were undoubtedly the three milk babies. However, when he recalled that the old ancestor was not much stronger than him, he immediately felt balanced. At this time, seeing that everyone was fine, Saint Rouet said with a smile, "It's my turn to play, right?" The handsome boy was silent. The middle-aged man wanted to play dumb, but he knew that he couldn't avoid it, so he had to force himself to say, "Okay, they'll take you to play." Although he said that, the middle-aged man was still angry and helpless. Just now, after negotiating with the staff for a long time, the other party refused to let the children play by themselves. He even said that he had already jumped once, so it was okay to jump again. As a man of status, he really didn't dare to say that he was afraid. Otherwise, if word got out, where would he put his face in the future? Just like that, the middle-aged man was once again forced into a corner. When the middle-aged man and Saint Rouet were fully armed, they closed their eyes and jumped down the cliff. The little handsome boy couldn't help but complain in his heart. The old ancestor is really going all out in order to take in a disciple. While silently praying for the old ancestor, Rouet walked up and said, "I still want to play." What? The little handsome boy's eyes widened, and he stuttered again. "I still want to play," Rouet repeated. "Can I pretend I didn't hear anything?" The little handsome boy's eyes were wide open, and he didn't say a word. "It's useless to play dumb. Equip him with equipment." Rouet looked at the little handsome boy and turned to the staff. When the staff member heard this, he immediately went forward to help the little handsome man, who was already a little stiff, put on his equipment. The little handsome boy saw that the other party was going to be hard on him and quickly stopped him. "Stop. You can't do this. I don't want to play anymore. We don't be like this." At first, the handsome young man's attitude was quite tough, but when he saw that the other party was completely ignoring him, he could only pretend to be weak. Unfortunately, it was useless to pretend to be weak. The staff member continued to ignore him, and a straightforward staff member even said, "You're not even afraid of three little kids. What do you have to be afraid of as an adult? Don't make us look down on you. What's there to despise? If you have the ability, dance for me once." The little handsome boy shouted angrily, "Sorry, it's working hours now. We can't play." One of the staff members gloated, "Bastard, a bunch of bastards. You can't do this." Unfortunately, the little handsome boy's resistance was futile. Very quickly, he and Rouet were equipped and brought to the edge of the cliff. Rouet gave Rouet Chow a look, and Rouet Chow indicated that she understood. Then she kicked the little handsome boy's butt, and the little handsome boy reenacted the scene of him being kicked off the cliff. Along with the screams, the staff members covered their faces and silently lit a candle for the handsome young man in their hearts. "Good luck. Kiss." In fact, the staff members were very sympathetic to the middle-aged man and the little handsome boy, but for some reason, they did not dare to disobey the children. Otherwise, they would not have forced the little handsome boy to equip himself with equipment. At least they could see that among the 5 people, the little boy had the final say. Chapter 3091. They're really going all out. 2. The staff, who knew their own limitations, of course had to do their best to serve the children. As for the middle-aged man and the handsome little boy, they could only apologize. When the middle-aged man and the little handsome boy came up from the cliff for the second time, they were both carried up. However, the middle-aged man was awake, while the little handsome boy was still unconscious. Seeing the state of the two, the 3 of them were all regretful, because they had not had their fun at all. AI. When the 3 sighs were heard, the middle-aged man was wondering why he had not fainted. AI. Let's go back to the hotel. As an older brother, Rouet Sheng quickly decided on his next trip. Although he still wanted to play, but looking at the condition of these two, he was afraid that it was impossible today. Hearing this, the middle-aged man was overjoyed, but he really couldn't stand up. His legs were soft. Wait, he could go back to the hotel, but who was going to drive the car? No one's driving. The middle-aged man looked at the staff and said honestly, "We'll get someone to send you back to the hotel." Receiving a certain someone's gaze, the staff member immediately understood. Since these 5 people had broken their company's bungee jumping record, it was only natural to send them back. When the 5 of them returned to the hotel safely, they suddenly felt that the middle-aged man and the handsome young man, who had just escaped death, had to lie in bed for 2 whole days before they recovered. However, although they had recovered, the 2 of them were still a little listless. They had no idea that they had become famous for bungee jumping. As the first people to try the crab in the 8,000-meter bungee jump, the 2 were now the idols of all bungee jumping enthusiasts. Their photos were hung in the most prominent place in the Hall of Fame for bungee jumping fans to admire. However, because the 2 of them had been lying in bed and had turned off their phones for the past 2 days, they didn't know anything about this matter. It wasn't until the bungee jumping company came to them and invited them to be endorsements that they realized the matter had blown up. They were furious. But why were the 2 of them the only ones who were popular? The middle-aged man and the little handsome boy were very confused. What about the 3? After clearing up the doubts in their hearts, the 2 of them found out that because the 3 of them were too young, the senior management of the bungee jumping company had completely regarded them as insignificant characters. As such, the 3 of them naturally had no chance of becoming famous. However, the bungee jumping company still made a family bungee jump, but the main characters were 2 adult men. After learning of this situation, the 2 of them looked at each other in silence. They were the small characters, right? But fortunately, the 2 of them knew that the children were too young, and with the personalities of the 3, they might not like to be famous. Therefore, the 2 of them tacitly took the blame for them. Of course, it couldn't be completely considered as the scapegoat. After all, the 2 of them did bungee jump. But even so, the middle-aged man felt that he should still have a good talk with the 3. After finding 3 of them, the middle-aged man requested to have a serious conversation with them. The handsome young man almost laughed out loud when he heard how cautious the ancestor was. However, the middle-aged man immediately gave him a sharp look, so he immediately put on a serious expression. "Talk about what?" The 3 blinked and asked. The middle-aged man sighed and told them the reason for the trip. The 3 immediately said, "Mom told us to keep a low profile, so this has nothing to do with us." The middle-aged man and the little handsome boy were silent. With the performance of these 3, they still wanted to keep a low profile. Should he be more low-key? That's just a small matter. There's one more important thing that I hope you can tell me the truth. The middle-aged man continued after calming down. "What?" Saint Rouet asked. "I would like to know how you guys managed to do that pie incident." The middle-aged man asked directly. "The pie incident?" The little handsome boy was a little curious. "What do you mean by how?" The 3 of them played dumb. "Why can't I take down the meat pie and the huge bowl?" Gritting his teeth, the middle-aged man asked again. "I don't know." The 3 of them looked up at the ceiling. "Do you know how serious this matter is? If such a strange event aroused the curiosity of some people, you may be captured and cut into pieces for research. With those people's cruel means, you will suffer at that time. So, before the situation is completely out of control, you'd better tell me the truth, so I can help you settle this matter." The middle-aged man said worriedly, "I see." The 3 of them nodded in understanding, but they didn't say anything else. The middle-aged man and the handsome young man, who had been waiting for their explanation, waited for a while, but the 3 of them didn't speak. They said anxiously, "Hurry up and tell me. What should I say?" The 3 of them looked innocent. "Tell me what's going on. It'll help you think of a way." The middle-aged man said, Yes, I can help you." Out of curiosity, the little handsome boy also chimed in. "But we really don't know what to say." The 3 of them continued to be innocent. Hearing this, the middle-aged man was about to go crazy. In fact, he had wanted to ask about this for a long time, but the 3 children kept saying that they were busy and he accompanied them all the way, so he didn't have time. But now he had to get to the bottom of it no matter what. Unfortunately, the 3 of them refused to cooperate. The middle-aged man grabbed his hair gloomily and growled, "How can I help you if you don't say anything? Have you not considered the serious consequences? We're just children. We don't need to think about this and that. We just need to have fun. Rue Jean said in a small voice, then took out a red fruit and took a bite. Right, there's no evidence that we did it. We could just deny it. Rue Z also said shamelessly, it can be done like this? The little handsome boy said in surprise after hearing this. Of course, little guy. This was all caused by your old grandma. So, if someone really wants to cause trouble for us, we'll go to her. We're not pushovers. Rue Z said viciously. The little handsome boy didn't know what to say. Who's the little guy? The three little kids in front of him were the little ones, okay? In fact, this was not the first time he had heard a certain old lady say this. But for some reason, he did not dare to refute her. Besides, he also wanted to say that the old lady had a high status in the family. After thinking for a while, the little handsome man said honestly, that old lady has a strong backing in our family, so she can't be bullied by anyone. After he finished speaking, he even looked at the old ancestor. His meaning was obvious. You can also find a backer. The old ancestor is just right. But the three obviously didn't understand, or it could be said that they were pretending to be confused. However, Rue Jean still replied with confidence, we also have a backer, my mom and dad. The little handsome boy was very depressed after hearing this. Your mom and dad can't interfere with my family's affairs. With this thought in mind, he looked at the old ancestor again, and then took the initiative to shut his mouth. The middle-aged man sighed heavily and said, can you let me see your parents? I need to talk to them. We cannot. They're very busy and have no time to see you. Saint Rue replied, very busy again. The middle-aged man wanted to go crazy. Whenever he has something to talk to the other party about, it's either the child or the parent who's busy. Could he say that he wasn't even that busy? The middle-aged man was depressed for a moment. He knew that he couldn't talk to these three. In other words, they weren't afraid of trouble at all. After thinking about it, he decided to wait and see. In the next few days, the middle-aged man kept an eye on all movements and ordered the little handsome boy to follow the three of them closely. The three of them clearly expressed that they didn't care about the little tales that appeared around them. After half a month, everything was still calm, and the middle-aged man gradually let down his guard. However, not long after he let his guard down, one morning, the three children were blocked by a group of fierce-looking strangers in the hotel. Looking at the strangers in front of them, the three who had just woken up were very confused. After a while, Rue Sheng asked calmly, who are you people? Did he knock? Did I invite you in? After hearing what Saint Rue said, the strangers who barged in twitched their mouths at the same time. One of them said, little doll, you're quite bold. It's all right, it's just average. Saint Rue replied with a humble look. When the strangers saw that the other party was being modest, they felt a little upset. They thought that their sudden appearance had frightened the three milk babies. Now, it seemed that they were not taken seriously. This made the strangers feel a little embarrassed. At the same time, the door of the room was knocked open again. The middle-aged man and the little handsome man ran in from outside in a panic. The two ran directly to the three and held them tightly in their arms to comfort them. Don't be afraid. They won't dare to touch you with us here. We're not afraid. Saint Rue said helplessly. The three of them looked like they were afraid. When the middle-aged man and the little handsome boy heard this, they suddenly felt that they seemed to have expressed the wrong feelings. This really made them very unhappy. However, now was not the time to fight among themselves. So the middle-aged man immediately looked at the strangers with anger. You have the nerve to bully three babies with so many people? If you want to bully them, you'll have to get past me first. The middle-aged man roared in anger. When the person opposite him heard this, he laughed and said, with you backing them up, how would we dare to bully them? We just want to get to the bottom of one thing. After that, the man turned his eyes to the third milk baby and asked directly, do you three have special abilities? The reason for this suspicion was because the incident of a certain woman's pie was too bizarre, and special abilities were considered legendary on planet Indigo, so they had to be careful. Of course, their main purpose for coming here was to find out what was going on with these three little babies. If it was really as they had guessed, they had to find out how the other party's special abilities came about. This was very important to them. When the middle-aged man heard the other party's question, He also looked at the three little children in surprise. His expression was full of deep thought. Special abilities? Was this possible? He really couldn't believe that the legendary thing would appear on the three of them. Of course, based on the current situation, he didn't want the three of them to have any special abilities, which was not a good thing. The middle-aged man, who had already treated the three of them as his disciples, obviously did not want them to get into trouble because of their wealth. The three didn't let him down and denied, "We don't have any special abilities." Chapter 3092. If you're in danger, look for your father. 1. No special ability? The person who spoke clearly did not believe him and continued to ask, "Since you don't have any abilities, how do you explain the pie incident?" "We have no comment." Saint Rouet replied calmly. Upon hearing this, a certain someone was enraged and shouted, "Do you know that because of your actions, that woman had to undergo surgery? Don't you feel any guilt at all?" When a certain someone said this, his face was full of disappointment, as if the three of them had done something unforgivable, making the three of them confused. The three of them looked at each other, and then let the eldest brother, Saint Rouet, speak. "Why should we feel guilty? What do we do? If you don't have any evidence, don't say anything. Otherwise, they'll sue you for slander. You want evidence? All right, they'll give it to you. Please invite Miss Juana." A certain someone was furious and instructed the people beside him. When they heard Juan Air's name, the three of them turned to look at the middle-aged man. The meaning in their eyes was obvious. His three eyes seemed to be saying, "You have a pig teammate." The middle-aged man suddenly felt his face burning. He really did not expect that Juaner would actually become the other party's witness again. One had to know that he had let Juaner return to the family. Not long after, Juaner walked in from outside. However, she did not dare to look at her old ancestor and stood beside a certain someone with her head lowered. Seeing Juan Air's guilty face and not daring to look at him, the middle-aged man's anger rose. Then he shouted, "Juaner, come over here." When Juaner heard the old ancestor's roar, she was so frightened that she hid behind a certain someone. Then she looked at the three little children with hatred and said, "They were the ones who threw the pie." "Juaner, what nonsense are you talking about?" The middle-aged man was about to die from anger, and the flames in his eyes were about to turn into daggers and attack Juan. Although Juan was a little afraid that the old ancestor would lose his temper, she still straightened her neck and shouted, "Old ancestor, I'm not talking nonsense. Didn't you see it too? So you saw it too? Then why didn't you say anything? Could it be that you want to take these three babies for yourself?" After Juan Air's words, a certain someone said with a look of realization, "The ancestor wants to take the three of them as his disciples." Juan Air said honestly and glared at the three. "So that's how it is. It seems that your young family really intends to take these three children for yourself." A certain someone said with a sinister smile, "Bah, you're lying. Our young family isn't as despicable as you." The little handsome boy was unhappy when he heard this. However, a certain someone didn't seem to mind and said to the three, "Little children, as you can see, everyone is very interested in your abilities, so you'd better be good and tell the truth. Children need to be honest to be cute. Do you understand? Don't listen to his nonsense." The middle-aged man quickly said after hearing the other party's words, "Yes." Saint Rouet nodded his head in understanding and did not intend to pay attention to a certain person. Someone was unwilling to give up and continued, "I won't lie to children. Little girl, don't believe this guy too much. Believe me, if the young family knows that you have special abilities, they will want to ask you the same thing as us. Their young family is not much stronger than us. We really don't have any special abilities." Saint Rouet sighed helplessly. "We don't, but we have this." Rouet Chiao suddenly interrupted. Immediately after, a small flame suddenly jumped on his fair and tender fingertips. Seeing this small flame that suddenly appeared, everyone's pupils, including the middle-aged man, could not help but constrict. Then, someone immediately pounced towards Rouet Chiao. "You little bastard, you actually dared to lie to us." A certain someone cursed in exasperation, but he did not stop pouncing towards Rouet Jean. Rue Jean did not dodge, but just stood there stupidly on the bed, allowing the other party to pounce on him. The middle-aged man was anxious when he saw this, and quickly stood in front of Rue Jean, not wanting to let a certain someone succeed. "Everyone, let's catch these 3 brats." Someone turned around and ordered the dumbfounded crowd, then pounced on the middle-aged man and started fighting. The middle-aged man was so busy that he couldn't take care of the 3 of them at the same time. The handsome boy who wanted to protect the 3 of them was also quickly entangled by the others. As a result, the 3 of them became live targets and were soon caught by the other party. After successfully capturing 3 of them alive, a certain someone stopped fighting and looked at the middle-aged man with a smug expression. "Now that the 3 little rascals are in my hands, you still want to fight? Let them go." The middle-aged man was furious. He looked anxiously at the 3 and comforted them. "Don't be afraid. We'll find a way to save you. No need. Just protect yourself." Saint Rue was still extremely calm. Upon hearing this, the middle-aged man became even more anxious. Why didn't he take a look at the current situation? Why was this devilish brat still so infuriating? Yes, just protect yourself. A certain someone was very happy with Saint Rue's words. This was equivalent to saying that these 3 brats looked down on this young family ancestor. "You shut up," the middle-aged man shouted at someone. "Don't make any noise. Let me say something." At this moment, Rue also spoke. "Brat, what are you trying to say?" a certain someone asked in amusement. These 3 children were really not like children from ordinary families. They were actually calmer than adults. "I want to say, Grandpa, you don't have to worry about us. Just go home." "Rue," he said honestly. The middle-aged man's mouth twitched when he heard this, and his face darkened. The devilish brat actually despised him. "Yes, if there's really danger, well, look for Dad," Rue Jean added. The middle-aged man was very sad and angry. Could it be that his strength was not as good as the father of these 3 disobedient children who had never shown his face? "Ha ha!" A certain someone saw that the 3 of them had taken the middle-aged man's good intentions as ill intentions and laughed happily. After that, he swaggered away with 3 of them in front of the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man wanted to give chase, but was stopped by the handsome young man. "You brat, why are you stopping me? Don't you know that you can't let them take the 3 babies away? The 3 children will be in danger if they fall into their hands," the middle-aged man said angrily. His eyes were full of dissatisfaction with the little handsome boy. "Old ancestor, it was Saint Rue who asked me to stop you." The little handsome boy had a strange expression on his face as he carefully said, "When did he say that? Why didn't I hear it?" The middle-aged man didn't believe him. "He sent me a mental message." The little handsome boy's face was also filled with disbelief. "Voice transmission?" The middle-aged man blinked. "How is this possible? Just now, Saint Rue's voice suddenly appeared in my mind. He told us not to interfere in this matter and said that they would be fine." The handsome boy said honestly, "Could it be that those 3 children have already reached the innate realm? How is this possible?" The middle-aged man's face was filled with inexplicable horror. If it was really as he thought, then the 3rd baby was too terrifying. Chapter 3093. If you're in danger, look for your father. 2. Sciention Realm. This was the dream of every ancient martial arts practitioner, but how difficult was it to break through to the innate realm? According to the middle-aged man's knowledge, no one had been able to break through to the inborn realm for thousands of years. Although he didn't want to believe that the 3 children were innate masters, what did the voice transmission say? One must know that only inborn realm experts could transmit their voices. And that little flame dancing on Rue Qiao's fingertips. How do you explain that? For a moment, the middle-aged man was at a loss. If those 3 were really innate masters, then wouldn't it be a joke for him to chase after them, to take them as disciples? Thinking of this possibility, the middle-aged man became worried again. The little handsome boy could clearly feel the deep resentment coming from his ancestor, and he was at a loss for what to do. Although his strength was far inferior to his ancestor's, he knew what the inborn realm was. That realm was definitely a legend now. Of course, there were also the so-called special abilities. The little handsome boy, who had almost the same thoughts as his ancestor, did not know how to comfort his ancestor. In fact, he was also shocked by this fact. In the end, the two of them could only stare at each other without saying anything. At the same time, the three of them were brought to a villa by the sea. After locking the three of them in one of the guest rooms, a certain someone appeared in front of the three of them with a smug smile on his face, along with a few middle-aged men in white coats. "Little brat, you're in my hands now, so you'd better be obedient," someone threatened. "Yes, we'll definitely be obedient," Saint Rouet promised. "If that's the case, then tell me how you got your abilities," a certain someone asked directly. "I was born with it. My parents gave it to me," Saint Rouet replied. "You little brat, do you think I'm a 3-year-old kid that's easy to fool? If abilities are really given by my parents, why don't I have them?" A certain someone shouted angrily, "Humph." He actually dared to lie to him. "If you don't have it, it can only mean that your parents' quality is not good." Rouet laughed evilly. "Well, if you really want the so-called special ability you mentioned, I suggest you go back to the furnace and reforge it. Finding good parents is better than anything else. Who asked this to be an era where fathers are the most important?" Rouet added in a matter-of-fact manner. When his words fell, the other two could not help but laugh wildly. A certain someone's face was darker than the bottom of a pot, and he pointed at the three and shouted, "You'd better think it through. If you don't tell the truth when you're in my hands, you'll end up in a very miserable state. What will happen to you?" Saint Rouet asked curiously. "In order to find out the reason for your abilities, we might even cut you up and bleed you out for research. In short, as long as we can find the key, the three of you won't be able to survive," a certain someone threatened. "What if we don't want to die?" Rouet asked. "Then tell me the truth. As long as you tell me how you got your abilities, I won't hurt you," a certain someone coaxed. "It's really from father and mother. Why don't you believe it? Besides, we don't have any special abilities." Saint Rouet's pretty little face was filled with helplessness. "Stop using your parents as shields. I don't believe it. Also, if that's not a special ability, then what is it?" The little brat clearly displayed a fire ability. A certain someone said with certainty, "All right, even if it's an ability, it was really given to us by our parents. We're not lying." Saint Rouet shrugged his shoulders, still looking helpless. "Since that's the case, do you dare to call your parents over for a confrontation?" A certain someone rolled his eyes and said, "No problem," he said. Saint Rouet nodded. Without waiting for his brother's instructions, Rouet took out his phone. After the call went through, he directly said into the phone, "Mom, someone caught us and cut our blood. Come and save us." Rouet and Rouet wanted to cover their faces. They were clearly still fine. After hearing what Rouet said to the phone, a certain someone directly grabbed the phone and threatened, "It'll give you 3 days to show up. Otherwise, you'll have to wait to collect the corpses of these 3 babies." After shouting this, a certain someone directly hung up the phone. "You're done for. How dare you threaten my parents? You're dead." Saint Rouet looked at a certain someone with sympathy. "Humph. If they don't show up in 3 days, you'll be the ones to die." A certain someone did not take Saint Rouet's words seriously at all. In his opinion, when the parents of these 3 kids came, they would also be his. With that, a certain someone turned around and wanted to leave. However, at this moment, the space in the room fluctuated a few times, and then a faint voice came from the air. "Is that so?" When he heard these 2 words, the man could not help but stop in his tracks. Then he saw a pair of devastatingly beautiful men and women with extraordinary temperament appear in the room. Looking at the beautiful man and woman who had appeared out of thin air, a certain person almost thought that his eyes were playing tricks on him. However, in the next second, he was carried by the beautiful man. "I'm asking you a question." The demon grabbed the other party's collar and said impatiently in a cold voice, What?" A certain someone was stunned. "If we don't show up in 3 days, you're going to kill my child?" Seeing that the other party's hearing wasn't very good, the evil and kind repeated, "Father, he did say that." Without giving a certain someone a chance to reply, Rouet smiled and threw himself into Lang Roakshu's arms, calling out sweetly, "Mommy, I missed you so much, little Ying. Who gave you the guts to do that?" Lung Ruoxua hugged her son as she continued to question him coldly. You're the parents of these 3 kids? A certain person who had already regained his senses asked carefully. At this moment, his heart was trembling violently, and even his voice was trembling. In addition, the unknown man's cold aura gave him a strong sense of oppression, so strong that his legs went soft, and he wanted to kneel down and worship. "Not bad." The demon nodded. "It's a misunderstanding. I just wanted to scare them. I didn't really want to hurt them." Seeing the demon admit it, a certain someone suddenly cowered and said with a fawning smile, "Scare? My son is not someone that a mere mortal like you can scare." The demon was very unhappy. He was having some alone time with his wife, but he was interrupted by a phone call. When his wife heard that someone was going to hurt the 3 babies, she immediately dragged him over. So, the evil demon put the account of disturbing his alone time with his wife on a certain unlucky fellow. In addition, the other party dared to scare his own child and make his wife angry. With all these added together, he could not let a certain someone off. Someone is dead. Although he had sentenced someone to death, the demon did not intend to let him die too easily. Immediately, he raised his hand and cut open the space of the 9 nether prison, then threw someone in. After dealing with a certain someone, the demon turned his eyes to the few people in white coats and asked indifferently, "You're in charge of bleeding and slicing my child?" No. The men in white coats were so scared that their mouths were wide open and their eyes were wide open. The man in front of them was so intimidating that even though he didn't glare at them, they felt an endless fear in their bones as if they had seen a demon from hell. More importantly, they didn't know where the man had thrown the man in front of them. So, they wouldn't dare to admit it even if they had 100 guts. However, did they have to admit it? The demon sneered and did not say anything else. He also cut open the space of the netherworld prison, and a few people in white robes also disappeared into the space channel. After cleaning up the trash in the room, the evil demon cleaned up the trash in the villa that had participated in bullying his own child before returning to the room. At this moment, the 3 of them were acting coquettishly with their dear mother. When the demon saw this, he immediately glared and said, "Little brat, you're already so old and you're still in your mother's arms. Get out of here. No way. You've been occupying mother for so long. It's time to return her to us." Saint Rue tilted his head and provoked, "My wife is mine." The evildoer gritted his teeth and reminded his son, "Your wife is our mother." Saint Rue also reminded, seeing that her dear husband was about to quarrel with her son again. Lung Ruoxua smiled helplessly and said, "All right, stop quarreling. You're all mine." "Yes, honey, I must be yours." The demon quickly tried to please him. "Mom, we're yours too." The 3 children also said, Be good. Lung Ruoxua first touched the demon's head, then the 3 children's. The demon was a little dissatisfied with the same treatment he received from his son. He should have been treated better than his son. Seeing through his thoughts, Lung Ruoxua glared at him without batting an eyelid. Then, she smiled at the 3 children and said, "Babies, you've been playing outside for so long. Isn't it time to go home?" "Wife," the demon wanted to object. If they went home, they would be snatching his wife away from him. Therefore, he was extremely unwilling to let the 3 brats go home so soon. It would be best if they were older, and then he could throw them directly into the chaos world. Unfortunately, even though he had a good idea, he did not have the chance to say anything before his wife glared at him, and he swallowed his words. "The training is over." Blinking his eyes, Rue Jean asked, "Let's put this to rest for now. I think you should go to kindergarten." Lung Ruoxua replied honestly. Although the 3 babies had extremely high IQs and were able to take care of themselves, so there was no need for them to go to kindergarten at all, she still hoped that her son could interact with more children and experience childhood life. This was because everyone only had one childhood. "What's a kindergarten?" Saint Rue could not help but ask. Kindergarten is a school for children your age. There are many children around your age in there, so it's very fun. Lung Ruoxua coaxed. Around our age? Ruiz blinked his eyes in disgust. Doesn't that mean he's still wet the bed? He knew very well that many ordinary human children would wet their beds when they were more than 1 year old. There are also some who are slightly older than you. Lung Ruashue hurriedly explained when she saw that her son seemed to despise children of the same age. Yes, there are all kinds of old people in school, so go to kindergarten. It's fun there. Even the demon was persuaded. Kindergarten is good. It's best if it's full-time. Hee. The demon was very happy. When the brat went to kindergarten, his wife would still be his alone. Seeing that both their parents wanted them to go to kindergarten, the three of them communicated with their eyes and then nodded in unison. All right, let's go to the kindergarten. To the three of them, it didn't make a difference whether they were at home or going to the kindergarten that they had never heard of before. However, since their mother wanted them to go, they would just go and ruin the kindergarten. Chapter 3094. Heading to the kindergarten. 1. As a good child, he had to obey his mother's words. Seeing that the three of them had agreed so easily, Lung Ruashue was naturally happy. The demon was also happy. Without the three of them at home, he could spend the day alone with his wife. Just thinking about it made him feel happy. However, before they went home, the three of them strongly requested to go to the hotel they had stayed in before to take a look. At least they had to let a certain strange Shuli know that they were safe. After all, these few days, strange Shuli had accompanied the three of them in their madness. At least they had formed a revolutionary friendship. Lung Ruashue and the demon naturally had no objections to their son's small request. With a teleportation, the five of them arrived at the hotel that the three of them had stayed in before. In the hotel room, the middle-aged man and the handsome little boy were worried about the three of them, but they were still in a dilemma since they could communicate with each other. However, even so, the two of them had contacted their close friends many times to ask them to help them find the whereabouts of the three. Not long after the two of them put down the phone, the door of the room they were in suddenly opened. The first to enter was a man and a woman. The middle-aged man and the handsome young man's first reaction was surprise, followed by uneasiness. As for why they felt uneasy, the two of them couldn't explain it, but they couldn't deny that the pressure this man and woman gave them was too great. By right, a handsome young man should be very excited to see a beautiful woman. However, under the pressure of a certain cold man's gaze, he did not dare to have any improper thoughts. This was because the stern-faced man's face clearly said, "How dare you have any ideas about my woman? Die." Although the man and woman didn't say a word after they came in, the little handsome man had this feeling. Even a middle-aged man felt that the two of them were not to be trifled with. With this thought in mind, the middle-aged man and the handsome boy did not dare to say a word since they did not know the purpose of the stranger's visit. They could only look at the stranger and wait for the other to speak first. However, as their hearts beat faster, the couple at the door still had no intention of speaking first. Suddenly, the middle-aged man and the handsome little boy were a little unsettled. Cold sweat was already dripping down the handsome boy's forehead. At this moment, a childish voice sounded, "Mom, Dad, don't scare the old man and this little guy. Look at how scared they are." These words were said by the Rui Xiao brat. Upon hearing this familiar voice, the middle-aged man and the little handsome boy's faces were filled with disbelief. The three of them were fine? Were this couple the three pets' father and mother? Just as they were thinking about this, three of them appeared from behind Lung Ruashue and the demon. When they saw the three of them smiling brightly, the middle-aged man and the little handsome boy could finally believe what they were seeing. The three of them had really been saved. It seemed that the other party's parents were not simple. This time, the middle-aged man did not know how to face the other party's parents. Thinking back, he had wanted to hit on the other party's son. In the end, his parents were not ordinary people at all. He could not even see his strength. AI. It was infuriating to compare people. Looking at how young his parents were, how could their strength be so unfathomable? The middle-aged man had no doubt that this couple's strength was above his. Although at this moment, he secretly thought that they might also be old monsters. The vitality in their bodies was very active. It was clearly the vitality that only young people had. In this regard, his vitality could not be compared to the other party at all. It was with this thought that he felt that the other party was young and his strength was unfathomable. It really made people envious, jealous, and hateful. For a moment, the middle-aged man thought a lot, but soon he was depressed again. They were both human, but why was the difference so big? And the brats, calling him old master in front of such a young parent. This was really too despicable. Didn't they make him old? The little handsome boy also had the same thought. This wasn't the first time he had been called a little fellow by a certain brat, but he definitely didn't expect that Rui Chiao, who only cared about eating, would actually call him that. Who is the little fellow here? Who is it? The little handsome boy was a little mad deep down, but he could only endure it in front of his parents. Lung Roashue glanced at the two of them, who were in a dilemma. They were trying their best not to show their emotions on their faces. Lung Roashue smiled and said, "Thank you for taking care of my baby. Now, we're going to take them home. Yes, Mom wants us to go to kindergarten, so we can't play outside anymore." St. Rui added. Upon hearing this, the middle-aged man and the little handsome boy were quite surprised. Go to kindergarten? They really wanted to say, do these three extremely smart little demons need to go to kindergarten? Wouldn't that be bullying children of the same age? As soon as they thought about how these three evildoers were going to wreak havoc in the kindergarten, the middle-aged man and the handsome little boy couldn't help but pray for the kindergarten that was about to be in trouble. It was really too terrifying. Thinking of the terrible consequences that were about to come, although the middle-aged man and the handsome little boy wanted to gossip, as soon as they saw the cold face of the man in front of them, they did not dare to say anything. However, the three of them were sensitive enough to sense the worry of the middle-aged man and the little handsome boy. They smiled and said, "Don't worry about us. It's just a kindergarten. It's child's play." The middle-aged man and the little handsome boy looked at each other and shouted in their hearts at the same time, "Dear, we're not worried for you." In comparison, the two of them were obviously more worried about the safety of the kindergarten. However, he obviously couldn't say this. On the other hand, Lung Ruashue and the demon chose to ignore the thoughts of the two adults. After some small talk, Lung Ruashue and the demon planned to leave with their child. Before they left, Lung Ruashue gave the middle-aged man and the little handsome boy 2 fruits that were suitable for them to eat as a token of her appreciation. She watched as they ate the fruits. Of course, she said that she was thanking them, but in reality, she was trying to comfort the two of them, who had been tormented physically and mentally because of their 3 babies. After that, the couple turned to leave with the babies. At that moment, Lung Ruakshu's beautiful eyes were attracted by a corner of shirt that was revealed at the leg of the bed. The evildoer quickly noticed his wife's abnormality. He narrowed his cold eyes and strode to the leg of the bed. He pulled out the owner of the clothes with a look of disgust. He pulled out an extremely disheveled and unconscious woman. When the middle-aged man and the handsome young man saw her, they immediately felt embarrassed. It was Huan who was carried out by the evildoer. The reason why Huan was unconscious was because he was beaten up by the angry middle-aged man. After that, Huan was thrown aside by the two of them. Logically speaking, this kind of thing should not be discovered by outsiders. But now, the two could only stand awkwardly, neither of them daring to shout, "Let go of that woman." Chapter 3095. Heading to the kindergarten, too, It's that old lady. As if he had discovered a new continent, Rui Zi said with a smile. "Dad, this is the woman who betrayed us." Rui Jin also complained. "Is that so?" After the demon heard this, he raised his eyebrows and looked at the middle-aged man and the little handsome boy with an unfriendly expression. Suddenly, the two of them were so scared that they trembled all over. This matter wouldn't be directed at them and the entire Yang family, right? The middle-aged man and the little handsome boy didn't know how powerful the demon in front of them was, but the fact that he was able to save the 3 children from the hands of those guys was enough to prove his strength. So at this moment, the two were very afraid that the other party would take his anger out on them, and at the same time, they were worried whether the Yang family could bear it. Lung Roashue could tell that the two of them were worried. She could not help but smile and comfort them. Don't be afraid. As long as the power you belong to isn't muddle-headed, we won't take out our anger on your entire clan. However, if your clan doesn't know what's good for them, then don't blame us for exterminating them. You should know that exterminating your entire clan is just the blink of an eye for us. Lung Ruakshu's words were both soft and hard. As a divine master, she naturally hoped that the other party was wise. That would save her the trouble of having to take action. In addition, she did not want to vent her anger on him because this was not the divine realm. After becoming a mother, she was a little more tolerant of ordinary people. Thus, she could punish the culprit, but would not vent her anger on others. Of course, the premise was that the other party had to know their own limitations. The middle-aged man and the little handsome boy immediately nodded like garlic being pounded. The middle-aged man even expressed, "Don't worry, our family is very reasonable. We will never do something that we shouldn't do for someone who betrayed our family." Hearing his words, Lung Ruashua nodded her head in satisfaction. After all, this was within her expectations. Otherwise, she would not have given the fruits to the two of them. After hearing the other party's words, the demon also said indifferently, "Since that's the case, they'll deal with this ant who dared to betray my son." Then, before the middle-aged man and the handsome boy could react, he raised his hand and opened a space gap, throwing the woman and his hand in. This scene deeply shocked the middle-aged man and the handsome young man. Their eyes were wide open and their faces were full of shock. They couldn't help but mumble, "Heavens! What is that?" They did not know why a dark crack had suddenly appeared in the room. The power that had inadvertently leaked out from the crack was so terrifying that it made people shudder. Juana had disappeared after being thrown into the crack. Although the two of them wanted to know what had happened, no one dared to ask. Moreover, the scene in front of them was beyond their knowledge. It was obviously not something that ordinary people could come into contact with. Just like that, the middle-aged man and the little handsome boy remained in a daze. They didn't even realize that Lung Ruashue and the demon had already left with the child. It was only when the two of them suddenly felt a sharp pain in their stomachs that they reacted and ran straight to the washroom. After they came out, the two of them could clearly feel that their bodies were different. A lot of impurities had been discharged from their bodies, and the middle-aged man could even faintly feel the signs of a breakthrough that had not been made for a long time. The middle-aged man didn't even have the time to tell the little handsome boy about the surprise. He only told him that he was going to break through and sat cross-legged on the bed. After a long time, the middle-aged man successfully broke through. Although he had yet to break through to the Sciention realm, he was much better than before. More importantly, his aptitude was no longer the same as before, and it was only a matter of time before he broke through to the Khanate level. The middle-aged man's eyes started to water up at the thought of this. As a martial artist, breaking through to the inborn realm was his biggest dream. However, he also knew that his body had undergone a marrow cleansing. This should be the benefit of the woman staring at the fruit he ate. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. Then, he carefully observed the little handsome man for a while before he cautiously said, "Don't let anyone know about this." The little handsome man's heart trembled at the old ancestor's caution, and he asked dumbly, "What's the matter? Pig, didn't you notice that your aptitude has improved a lot?" The middle-aged man was exasperated and said with a look of disappointment, "What a pig! How could he have such a stupid descendant? He was having a headache." I really didn't notice, but I did notice that the old ancestor seems to have become younger again." The little handsome boy blinked his eyes and joked, "You brat, you got some guts now?" The middle-aged man's eyes widened when he heard that. It's true. But ancestor, what's going on with us?" The little handsome boy still didn't understand. "Idiot, it should be because of the fruit." The middle-aged man replied honestly, "Arg, could it be that the fruit was bad? No wonder I had diarrhea for so long. However, there are also advantages to being bad. At least I feel as light as a swallow after having diarrhea." The handsome boy said smugly. "Ha!" The middle-aged man slapped the little handsome boy's head and looked at him as if he was wasting God's gift. He said fiercely, What we're eating should be the legendary and precious spiritual fruit. Arg, was it a spiritual fruit? But is the effect of the spirit fruit just diarrhea? The little handsome boy was very excited, but then he felt that it was unbelievable. Do you think anyone can eat spirit fruits? We have diarrhea because there are impurities in our bodies. The spiritual fruit is helping us. So, you have to be grateful, you know? This matter can be big or small. You can't tell anyone else, or else you'll cause trouble for others. The middle-aged man warned. Not even the family? The handsome boy couldn't help but ask. You're not allowed to say anything. This is not our selfishness, but for the good of the family. As you can see, that couple isn't ordinary people at all, and offending them won't do us any good. We can't afford to offend them, so in order to avoid trouble, we can only keep this matter to ourselves, understand? The middle-aged man said sternly. Understood. The little handsome boy quickly nodded. Also, you will be my personal disciple from now on. I will personally guide you. The middle-aged man continued. Thank you, old ancestor. The little handsome boy quickly knelt down and was extremely excited. It must be known that a direct disciple and a young family member were absolutely not the same. With the supreme position of the old ancestor in the Yang family, he was definitely considered to have reached the sky in a single step. When he thought of this, he couldn't help but thank the 3 milk babies who liked to call him little fellow. If it weren't for them, he was afraid that he wouldn't have such an opportunity. After a simple master-disciple ceremony, the master-disciple relationship between the two was set. But then, the little handsome boy heard the old ancestor sigh again and couldn't help but ask curiously, Old ancestor, why are you sighing? If you have any difficulties, as long as you give the order, this disciple will not hesitate to do so. I'm thinking, he has helped us so much, Sai. I don't deserve it. The middle-aged man said after some thought, why don't we give them a hand too? The handsome boy suggested. He also felt that he had gained a big advantage. Why would they need our help? The middle-aged man was very worried. The couple was mysterious, and he didn't think he could help them. Why do you know if you ask? The little handsome boy said. They've already left. How can you ask? The middle-aged man was very depressed. He was completely petrified at the time and didn't have time to ask for contact information. Of course, even if he wasn't petrified, he knew that he wouldn't dare to ask for it. I have the 3 babies' phone numbers, the little handsome boy said with a little pride. Hearing this, the middle-aged man became even more depressed. He couldn't help but think to himself, these 3 heartless little things. They've known each other for so long, but I still don't know about the 3 phone numbers. But now, a junior was ahead of him. The middle-aged man suddenly felt that he was a failure of a person. Even the satisfied look in his eyes when he looked at the little handsome man instantly became gloomy and cold. Give those 3 brats a call and tell them not to be shy if they need anything. After saying that, the middle-aged man turned around and left angrily. The little handsome boy was not used to his ancestor's sudden arrogance. If he had not been with his ancestor all this time, he would have suspected that this person was really his ancestor. However, he still obediently followed his ancestor's instructions and gave the 3 a love call. At this time, the 3 of them had already arrived home and were eating their mother's love meal. However, after receiving the call from the little handsome boy, the 3 of them ran back to their rooms secretly. Could it be that our son has a girlfriend? Lung Ruashua couldn't help but tease her son when she saw how mysterious he was. My son is amazing. The demon cooperated with his wife, and the couple teased each other very happily. Lung Qingtian and Lung Ruhan, who were watching from the side, couldn't stand it anymore. One of them rolled his eyes at them. What are you talking about? My grandson is not even 2 years old. If they dare to start a relationship at such a young age, it'll break that girl's legs. You're not allowed to lead my 3 grandsons astray. Oh my God. The moment Lung Ruashua heard this, she quickly surrendered. She didn't dare to joke around anymore. She couldn't afford to offend a grandfather who was so protective of his children. Following which, Lung Ruashua took the initiative to change the topic. Hubby, you can send the 3 kids to kindergarten tomorrow. All right. The demon nodded. He would definitely complete the task given by his wife seriously. Anyway, his wife had already chosen the kindergarten, and he was only responsible for bringing the child to sign up. I heard that there's an exam. However, with his child's intelligence, he believed that only his son had the right to choose the school. The confident demon didn't even care about the exam. What Lung Roashu didn't tell him was that she had chosen an international private kindergarten for her sons. Other than the expensive school fees, the admission requirements were very strict. However, it wasn't that Lung Roashu didn't tell him on purpose, because she didn't notice it herself. She only found out from the internet that the kindergarten was said to be the best on planet Indigo. Since it was the best, her son naturally had to go and take a look. The next morning, the evildoer set off with the 3 beautiful and cute babies. Chapter 3096, A Marriage Certificate. 1. When they arrived at the kindergarten, the person in charge of receiving them was a young and beautiful woman. At first sight, the woman was stunned. This was a Prince Charming. In the blink of an eye, the woman's heart was like a little deer, and her small face slowly flushed red. It was as if there was only the demon in the world, and nothing else could enter the woman's eyes. In the face of the woman's dazed look, the demon only felt infinite frustration. Didn't they say that this kindergarten was very famous? Why was the person in charge of receiving them an idiot? Look, they were all drooling. The demon was extremely disgusted and wanted to turn around and leave. However, the 3 children were watching the show with great interest. Hee. There was something fun to do. The 3 of them were very excited and decided to stay and play. They had to stay with this old lady who was drooling at the sight of their father. He must be tired of living to drool at his own father. This was a blatant violation of their mother's rights. No, I can't let this slide. Just as the 3 of them were thinking about how to defend their mother's rights, the young woman finally came back to her senses and remembered the important matter. Then she asked shyly, "Are you here to send your nephew to take the entrance exam?" Nephew? Who was he talking about? The demon didn't react for a moment. Seeing that the man in front of her did not seem to understand, the woman pointed at the 3 little children beside him. Instantly, the demon's face darkened. "You bastard! This was his son. His own son. How did he become a nephew?" The evildoer was very dissatisfied with this. Wasn't this giving his wife and child to that brother that he didn't even have? Immediately, the demon said with a dark face, "These 3 are my sons. He's our father." The 3 children were extremely cooperative. Hearing that the stunningly beautiful man was taken and had 3 children, the young woman was extremely disappointed. Why did all the good men belong to other families? Whoa. However, she had no choice. Who asked her to meet him late? It was a pity that the demon didn't know what the woman was thinking. Otherwise, he would have told her personally that he didn't know her. Fortunately, this young woman knew her own limits. After knowing that the other party was already taken, she looked at the demon a few more times in sadness and consoled herself. Such a peerless demon-level handsome man was really not someone she could control. But he could at least take a few more glances, right? Just like that. The young woman kept staring at the evildoer until he was about to explode. She then said, "Since you're here to register, let's take the exam first." After that, the woman led the 4 of them into an empty office. When the 3 of them were taking the exam, the woman couldn't help but want to chat with the demon for a while. Unfortunately, the unromantic demon completely ignored the woman. After singing a one-man show for a while, the woman felt that she was not interested and could only shut her mouth obediently. The evildoer with a quiet ear was instantly satisfied. However, not long after, the woman's eyes began to drift towards the evildoer, intentionally or otherwise. Everyone loved beauty and couldn't control it. However, her red and stunning eyes made the evildoer even more irritated. He really wanted to beat someone up. How was he going to break this feeling? At this moment, the evildoer wished he could throw this love-struck girl out of the office. Fortunately, in less than half an hour, the 3 of them finished the test paper, which inadvertently saved a certain ignorant love-struck girl, because if they were any later, the demon might really throw them. After the 3 finished their tests, The young woman reluctantly retracted her gaze and couldn't help but ask, "You really finished answering? Don't you need to check?" She still wanted to see more beautiful men. "I don't need it. Don't test our intelligence with such simple questions." As the big brother, Saint Rouet said with a look of disdain, these questions were obviously meant to fool ordinary children. They were not little kids. In Saint Rouet's heart, they were adults. The woman took the paper doubtfully and casually glanced at it. All of them were actually correct. At least the answers to the questions she had read were all correct. This was clearly a genius. This was because a large part of the papers in their kindergarten were IQ tests, and she happened to be looking at that part. The answers on the 3 papers were exactly the same, and some were even better than the standard answers. This was really unbelievable. Instantly, the young woman's eyes lit up as she looked at the 3 of them. The 3 of them had no choice but to hide behind their father. However, in order to prevent the young woman from staring at their father, the 3 of them held back. After a long time, the woman put away her excited expression and said to the demon, "Sir, your 3 sons are all geniuses. Isn't that normal?" The demon said matter-of-factly. When the woman heard this, she couldn't help but think to herself, "Isn't he a little too narcissistic?" However, she could understand the feelings of the father in front of her. Who wouldn't be proud to have 3 such genius sons? AI. This was also someone else's child. The woman who was envious and jealous said to the demon, "These 3 children have already passed the entrance exam, but whether they can be accepted still depends on whether they can pass the review of the relevant information. So, give me the information you brought, and you can take the children home and wait for the notice." "What do you mean?" The demon didn't understand. Couldn't he pass the exam? What kind of data review is needed? He even wanted them to go home and wait for the notice? Shrimp? The demon was a little dissatisfied. Did his son need to be reviewed by others? He was a true blue second generation of a god. In his opinion, his son should be the one choosing the kindergarten. How could he let this lousy kindergarten choose his son? Immediately, the evildoer's impression of this kindergarten took a sharp turn for the worse. No matter how luxurious the facilities were and how beautiful the environment was, he did not have a good impression of it. He was even considering if he should get his sons to change to another kindergarten. His son did not come to the kindergarten to be bullied. If he really wanted to bully her, she could only let him do so. It could be said that although a father often found his son an eyesore, he could only despise his son. No one else could. Stop daydreaming. Because he didn't have a good impression of this kindergarten, the evildoer was thinking if they should turn around and leave. The young woman didn't expect her idol to not understand her meaning. She felt a little upset. Was she speaking an alien language? Although the young woman was a little depressed, she still explained patiently for the sake of her male god. "Sir, we are an international kindergarten. The children in our school must be verified. Otherwise, they can't come to our kindergarten to study. This is the normal procedure of our kindergarten. We treat all children equally. So, please don't misunderstand. We absolutely don't mean to make things difficult for you." Chapter 3097. A Marriage Certificate 2. As the woman explained, she couldn't help but think to herself that she would never make things difficult for her Prince Charming. She really hoped that his child would come to their kindergarten to study. That way, she would have a chance to see her idol a few times. AI, who asked the male god to be taken. Even if she couldn't get into her idol's eyes, it was still good to look at her idol a few more times. Thinking of this, the woman's mood suddenly turned bad. Children grew up very quickly, and geniuses usually entered school early, so it was really a rare sight to see. It could be said that at this moment, she hoped more than anyone else that these 3 children could enter their kindergarten to study. After explaining, the woman looked at her Prince Charming with watery and expectant eyes. Unfortunately, the demon was still thinking about whether they should leave or not. As the saying goes, no one knows his father better than his son. Although the 4 of them had not known each other for a long time, seeing that their father had not spoken for a long time, Ruishing and Rueyes could more or less guess what was going on. So, the 2 little kids immediately pulled on the corner of their father's clothes and said, "Dad, hurry up and sign us up." We want to come here to play." Hearing this, the evildoer lowered his head and looked at his sons. He saw that his two sons were very determined. Although the other child was eating, that silly child had always listened to his elder brothers and did not have any objections, so he nodded in agreement. Seeing her idle nod, the young woman's suspended heart finally relaxed. "Please fill out a registration form first, and then give me the information you've prepared." The young woman struck while the iron was hot. After she finished speaking, she handed a registration form to the evildoer. The demon took the form and quickly filled it out. The young woman admired the demon's vigorous handwriting and couldn't help but exclaim, "Prince Charming is indeed Prince Charming. Look at the words, they are so imposing." In an instant, the woman's love-struck syndrome flared up again, and her eyes were filled with red hearts as she stared at the demon who was filling in the form with a scorching gaze. Feeling the burning gaze on him, the evildoer wrote even faster. A few minutes later, the form was filled up. He quickly handed the form to the woman and then pulled his 3 sons out of the office in a hurry. When the woman saw that the evildoer was about to leave, she quickly looked at her father's name on the form and shouted, "Mr. Yi, you haven't given me your information yet." The evildoer, who had just arrived at the door, quickly threw the craft paper bag that he had prepared on the table closest to the office door. Then, he carried his 3 sons and strode away. The woman wanted to chase after him, but the demon was too fast. By the time she reached the gate of the kindergarten, the father and son had already disappeared. In fact, after leaving the office, the evildoer teleported home with his son, so the woman naturally couldn't catch up. At this moment, Lung Roashue was taking care of the flowers and plants in the garden. When she saw the 4 of them suddenly appear in front of her, she couldn't help but be stunned. "Why are they back so soon? Done with the registration?" Lung Roashue asked with a gentle smile. "Mom, we're done. The old lady at the kindergarten told us to go home and wait for the notice." Saint Rue replied with a smile. "Wait for the notice." Lung Roashue was surprised. Even though she knew that the top schools had extremely strict entrance requirements, she was just like the evildoer. She thought that her son was the best, so she didn't even think that she would have to wait for the notice. After hearing this, she was still quite calm. After all, the famous schools in her previous life had many admission requirements. Some of the top schools could not be entered just because you had money. "What else did you guys do other than taking the exam?" Lung Roashue asked. Dad filled out a form. "Also, the old lady is drooling at Dad." Rue Z counted with his little fingers and started to tattle. When the demon heard this, his face immediately darkened by half. Then, he angrily glared at Rue Z, who was complaining, and roared, "Little brat, what are you talking about? Damn it, how could he tell his wife about this? My wife will be jealous." After he finished shouting, the evildoer looked at Lung Roashue uneasily. His eyes were red as if saying, "Wifey, I didn't do anything, it's none of my business. Please, I'm not your match." Looking at the evildoer's cautious expression, Lung Roashue really wanted to laugh. However, she tried her best to pretend to be unhappy and did not say a word. Seeing that his wife didn't express her opinion, the demon was so scared that his little heart trembled. At this time, his son was still causing trouble for him. "Father, we can teach them a lesson if they call us little brats, but why are you scolding us too? You must know that scolding us is the same as scolding yourself. If we're little brats, then what are you? Old rabbit? And mommy, wouldn't she become a female rabbit?" Rui's added, "We're the same kind as them." Rue Jean, who was eating, did not idle around and interrupted, pointing at the 2-rabbit mainframe in the corner. After listening to Rue Qiao's words, the 2-rabbit mainframe's mainframe wished they could just pass out. What was this called being unjustly attacked? They were. It clearly had nothing to do with them. So why did they have to involve the innocent? The indignant rabbit mainframe shouted in unison, "It's not our fault. We are definitely not the same kind." After saying that, the 2 palm-sized rabbits kicked their legs, closed their eyes, and fainted. This time, the demon's face darkened. "To hell with your rabbit." Lung Roashue couldn't help but burst out laughing. She realized that her husband was so cute, her son was so cute, and even the rabbit at home was quite cute. Seeing that Lung Ruoxue was smiling, the evildoer's face was still black, but he could finally put his heart at ease. Luckily, his wife was not angry. The next second, the demon picked up his wife and said, "Honey, let's go back to our room. He'll explain it to you." He did not even give Lung Ruoxue a chance to nod her head. Afraid that his sons would cause trouble, the evil demon carried Lung Ruoxue and teleported out of the garden, leaving the three depressed little kids in the garden, sighing. When would he grow up? Now, her small arms and legs couldn't compete with her tall and strong father. The three of them were very worried and in a bad mood. Back in the room, the demon hugged Xiang Xiang's wife and complained gloomily, "Wifey, our sons are bullying me. You have to give me justice. How do you want me to make the decision for you?" Trying hard not to laugh, Lung Ruoxue asked in a cooperative manner, "When our son bullies me, you have to help me." The demon said impolitely, "What about when you bully our son?" Lung Ruoxue asked instead of answering. "You still have to help me," the demon said domineeringly. "Okay, he'll tell her son not to bully you, but you're not allowed to bully him too much," Lung Ruoxue requested with a smile. "I'm doing this for our son's good. You should suffer more from childhood, or you'll be a waste when you grow up. As the saying goes, those who achieve great things must first exhaust their bones and starve their skin. I don't want our son to become a mommy's boy. So, as a responsible father, I have to be strict with my sons," the demon said matter-of-factly. "All right, at most, he'll open one eye and close the other," Lung Ruoxue agreed. In reality, she was like this because she knew that the evildoer was a father who knew his limits. Sometimes, this father was even more protective of his children than she was. Besides, this was his biological father. He would never mistreat his own son. Lung Ruoxue, who was very assured of the evildoer, could not be bothered with the fierce battle between the father and son. Besides, this was the unique way the father and son got along. So what was there for her to be worried about? After adopting a free-range attitude towards her husband and son's interaction, Lung Ruoxue curiously asked about the details of her visit to the kindergarten today. Speaking of this, the evildoer was a little depressed. Seeing that his wife had asked, he poured out all the dissatisfaction in his heart. Lung Ruoxue furrowed her brows when she heard this. It seemed like this kindergarten was harder to get into than she had imagined. "If it wasn't for our son's interest in this kindergarten, I would have brought him back. What a lousy place. How dare you be so picky with our son?" "Oomph," the demon said proudly. "Forget it. Since our son likes it, let's not be so calculative." Lung Ruoxue didn't expect her son to want to go to that kindergarten so badly. Of course, she would never have thought that the reason why the three of them wanted to go to that kindergarten was to defend her rights. If she had known, she would have told her sons that no one could take away their father's rights. Now, she only thought that her son really liked it there. Lung Ruoxue, who wanted her son to have a perfect childhood, naturally wanted to fulfill her son's wish. Just as Lung Ruoxue was thinking about how to increase her son's chances of entering that kindergarten, there was a knock on their door. The demon opened the door and saw three of them standing outside. Rui Sheng was holding a phone in his hand. "Dad, the old grandma from the kindergarten is calling," Saint Rui said as he waved the phone in his hand. "What is it?" The demon frowned, obviously not happy that the other party interrupted his warm moment with his wife. However, he also thought that the other party might be informing him that the review was completed, so he still took the phone. The young woman on the other end of the phone suddenly became nervous when she heard her idol's voice. Without waiting for the other party to actually speak to her, she took the initiative and said, "Mr. Yi, the information you provided is not complete." "What do you mean?" The demon was dissatisfied again, and his voice became colder. Even through the phone line, the woman could feel the coldness in the other party's tone. Her heart trembled, and she quickly said, "The documents also require your and your wife's marriage certificate." "Marriage certificate? What's that?" The demon had never heard of this thing. Are you not married?" When a woman heard her idol say this, she couldn't help but guess, and at the same time, her heart beat faster. If that was the case, Did that mean that the other party might not have a wife? Of course, I'm married, the demon said with certainty. The wedding was already over, so how could they not be married? However, he really did not have a marriage certificate. He had never even heard of it. Chapter 3098. Wifey, collect the marriage certificate. 1. Since you're married, you should have a marriage certificate. The woman on the other end of the phone felt her heart turn cold and complained. How could her idol have a child out of wedlock? Hearing this, the evildoer did not know how to respond. He was married. Back then, he and his wife had even signed a marriage contract of mutual loyalty. However, this kind of thing belonged to the depths of the soul, and there was no relevant certificate. So, he really didn't have the marriage certificate that the other party had mentioned. If there's no marriage certificate, what will be the consequences? The demon asked. If you can't produce a marriage certificate, it can only prove that your 3 children are illegitimate children. Our kindergarten does not accept illegitimate children. The woman carefully replied, Illegitimate child? These 3 words deeply stimulated the evildoer, his son. How could a god's second generation be an illegitimate child? He would never allow such a thing to happen. Oomph. His son couldn't be an illegitimate child. He'll send the marriage certificate to the kindergarten later. The evildoer suppressed his anger and said calmly. When he said this, the more he thought about it, the angrier he got. What kind of place was he breaking? If you want proof everywhere, can't you just let me live? If they didn't have a cheating device, he would have been tortured by all kinds of marriage certificates. Now, without a marriage certificate, his 3 sons were going to become illegitimate children in the eyes of others. More importantly, without the marriage certificate, he actually had no status. Just thinking about it made the evildoer want to vomit blood. But when he hung up the phone and turned around, he looked at his wife with a pitiful expression and said, Honey, we haven't even gotten our marriage certificate yet. The kindergarten here doesn't acknowledge our relationship as husband and wife. The evildoer's expression was filled with deep resentment and grievance. It gave Lung Ruashue a headache. Ever since they came to live on planet Indigo, they had only come into contact with proof of identity and used it most of the time. Hence, she had never thought of getting any other proof. Now, they even needed a marriage certificate to attend kindergarten, and they didn't have one. It seemed that her husband also cared about this. AI. This time, she was afraid that she would have to make a lot of unfair conditions. The facts had proven that Lung Ruashue definitely had the foresight to do so. She felt that this evildoer, whose identity was currently unknown, was extremely aggrieved. Now, not only was his son suspected to be an illegitimate child, but he was also an illegal husband without a title. Woo! No, his fragile little heart had been seriously hurt. His wife had to compensate him. Wife, please make it up to me. In his devilish eyes, he clearly expressed his intention for his wife to compensate and comfort him. Although the 3 of them did not understand what had happened, they instantly understood when they saw their father's expression. They deeply felt that their father was going to bully their mother again. It was really embarrassing. The 3 of them covered their little faces exaggeratedly, only revealing their big, watery eyes to watch the show. Lung Ruashue, who was extremely helpless at the reaction of the 4 of them, could only hug her husband with one hand and her 3 sons with the other. She then said helplessly, Let's get our marriage certificate first. What about compensation? The evil man looked at his wife with dissatisfaction. Just getting a marriage certificate couldn't make up for his broken heart. He wanted material compensation. Lung Ruashue, who understood what the demon was thinking, ignored him on purpose and said to Saint Rue, Go and call the 2 rabbits over. Ruashing received his mother's order and ran to find a rabbit. After a while, 2 palm-sized rabbits followed Rue, Shung, and jumped in carefully. Master, please give me your orders. Seeing the female owner, a rabbit mainframe quickly said, Get us a marriage certificate. Lung Ruashue directly stated her request. Got it. They'll get it done immediately. The other rabbit, mainframe, immediately said. In less than a minute, a certain rabbit replied. Master, it's done. Lung Ruashue nodded. Although there were many certificates on this planet, there was one advantage. All the certificates were electronic. If there was a need, they could print a copy directly and not have to run around with the original copies of the certificates. After getting the marriage certificate, Lung Roashue called Jikai and told him to bring her and the evildoer's marriage certificate to the kindergarten. Then, she coaxed her son away and focused on her husband. Atsundara husband was difficult to deal with, and Atsundara and willful husband was even more difficult to deal with. Lung Roashue tried her best to sweet-talk him and made many unfair conditions before she finally managed to lift her husband's spirits. The demon also received a lot of material compensation, as he had wished. On the other side, when Jikai arrived at the kindergarten with a marriage certificate, the receptionist was in a bad mood when she saw that it was a middle-aged man who came to deliver the marriage certificate instead of her Prince Charming. After taking the copy of the marriage certificate and verifying its authenticity, her mood dropped even more. Why did Mr. Yi come? A woman who didn't see her male god unwilling to give up couldn't help but ask. My master isn't free, so he asked me to bring it over. Although Jikai felt that the woman's tone was very strange, he still replied kindly. However, when he saw the woman's disappointed expression when he said this, he instantly understood. Was this woman mesmerized by her master's beauty? Oh my God, you'd better not. It must be known that his master hated trouble the most, especially trouble that might make Madame angry. Those were all things that his master had to eliminate. It could be imagined that if this woman continued to be stubborn, she would probably lose her life. When he thought of this, Jikai looked at the woman with more sympathy. She was such a young girl. Please don't take things too hard. It could be said that Jikai was thinking a little too far, because this woman had long been lost. However, even so, she still wanted to look at her male god a few more times. Even if he couldn't get it, it was good to see it. But now, hearing Jikai say that her male god was busy and the middle-aged man calling her master, the woman couldn't help but ask, "He's your master? Then what does he do?" This is a secret. Jikai hesitated for a moment, but he still didn't dare to reveal his master's identity. Would anyone believe that his master was a god? Maybe some people even thought he was a mental hospital patient. But our kindergarten requires at least one of the parents to have a proper job and a monthly income of no less than 500,000 indigo coins. So please tell us the truth. Also, there are some problems with the form your master filled in, the woman said with some hesitation. Originally, she didn't mention this over the phone, hoping to have more opportunities to get in touch with her idol and guide him in person to fill in the form correctly. But now, her idol wasn't here, so she could only look for his servant. After hearing the woman's explanation, Jikai was even more conflicted. He really couldn't say it. His master and madam didn't need to work to earn money. They were basically self-sufficient now, especially after having 2 mainframes. Anything could be done online, so he really couldn't say that the masters were actually unemployed. If that was the case, the woman in front of him would go crazy, and the little masters would probably not be able to enter this kindergarten. Chapter 3099, Wifey, collect the marriage certificate. 2. What's wrong with my master's form? Jikai asked after a while. See for yourself, especially the work experience column. The woman sighed helplessly and then handed the form to Jikai. She was the only one who had seen this form. If it fell into someone else's hands, the 3 children would probably never have the chance to enter the amusement park, and she would never be able to see her Prince Charming again. So, she would never allow such a thing to happen. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so anxious. Jikai took the form and read it carefully. There were no problems with the children's information, so he was not afraid of anyone knowing. However, when he got to the parents' information, other than their parents' names and gender, the rest. Age, confidential. The call was from Ruishing. Address, confidential. Family members, too many, omitted. Educational background, confidential. Work experience, confidential. Profession, God. Looking at these almost empty forms, Jikai's face darkened. When he saw the title goddess in the column, he broke out in cold sweat. Oh my God! He couldn't even stay calm when he saw this form. It wasn't hard to imagine how crazy outsiders would be when they saw this form. My master is very particular about privacy, so he doesn't want outsiders to know about some of our family's affairs. But don't worry, we can definitely afford the tuition fees. Jikai said with a kind attitude after wiping his cold sweat. Sir, this isn't a matter of money. Although our kindergarten charge is very high, you have to know that not all children from rich families can enter our kindergarten. Because we value our children's background very much, it's absolutely not enough to just have money and be able to pay the school fees. I hope you and your master can understand this. The woman explained again. Of course, Jikai understood that the other party wanted to recruit children from rich and powerful families. To put it bluntly, people would not accept the children of the nouveau riche. He had seen this kind of snobbish situation many times before, so he was already used to it. However, he also knew that with his master's superficial appearance, the young masters of this kindergarten might not be able to enter. AI, what is this good? Although Jikai knew very well that there was no one more distinguished than his master on the entire planet Indigo, the people here didn't know, and master's identity couldn't be exposed. At this moment, he really had a headache. It was a pity that the children had to take the test to enter this kindergarten. Otherwise, with the two mainframes' online operations, they would be able to enter. Sir, do you understand what I mean? Seeing Jikai frowning and not replying for a long time, the woman asked. I understand. May I bring this form back from master to fill out again? Jikai, who had a headache, decided not to think about it anymore. He would leave this small matter to his master and madam to solve. Sure, the woman directly gave Jikai a new blank form and told him a lot of things to pay attention to before watching him leave. AI, too bad it wasn't a Prince Charming. Looking at Jikai's back, the woman's face was full of regret. Then, she turned around and returned to her office. When Jikai returned home and reported the situation, the evildoer was immediately dissatisfied. Why was there so much trouble in that lousy kindergarten? Is there an end to this? Lung Ruoxue, on the other hand, picked up the form that evildoer had filled out earlier. When she saw the word God in the occupation column, she could not help but burst out laughing. Honey, what's so funny? The demon said with some grievance. Hee hee, why is your class written as God? There's no God in this world, and they don't believe in gods. If people see you writing like this, they might think you're crazy. Lung Ruoxue explained with a smile. So what? Do I need to look at their eyes? The demon said nonchalantly. In fact, he didn't want to write about God at that time. He wanted to write about it as a secret, but after thinking about it, his son was the second generation of a god, so he felt that he had to let people know about it. It didn't matter if they believed it or not. He was just afraid that someone would bully his child. Of course not. But we're living here now, so we must do as the Romans do. Lung Ruoxue patted the evildoer's head as she tried to comfort him. Then I can only write about the unemployed. The demon said honestly. Lung Ruoxue thought about it and realized that they were indeed unemployed. He didn't know if it was too late to start a company now. As soon as the thought popped up in her head, Lung Ruoxue immediately instructed Jikai. Jikai, they'll give you 3 days to set up a jewelry company for me. Jikai was shocked. Did he hear wrong? Madam wants to start a company? In the past, when they wanted to exchange their jewelry for money, they would directly go to the auction house or the jewelry company to trade. Why did they suddenly want to set up their own jewelry company? Although Jikai could easily guess that the madam wanted to set up the jewelry company for the 3 young masters, was it necessary? The child that the kindergarten wanted to take in had to have a strong family background. Even if a new company was making money, it might be seen as a nouveau riche in the eyes of the kindergarten. When Jikai carefully revealed his thoughts, Lung Ruoxue felt that she had thought too simply. Did she have to let the 2 mainframe brains cheat on their family background? Lung Ruoxue was a little depressed. It was one thing to cheat on her identity, but if her family background was also a cheat, how much of a failure would she have to face? Seeing their mother frowning, the 3 who had been listening by the side felt very uncomfortable. They felt that someone had bullied their mother. You're looking for death. Mom, That little guy from the Yang family said that if we have any problems, he'll be happy to run an errand for us. At this time, Saint Rue could not help but remind him. That little brat from the Yang family? Lung Ruoxua blinked her beautiful eyes. Even though she had always kept a low profile and was unwilling to rely on nepotism, it seemed more convenient for the powers on planet Indigo to act at this moment. Moreover, the Yang family's influence on the Indigo Star was not small. Knowing that her son seemed to be in contact with the Yang family's little fellow, Lung Ruoxua immediately said, "Give him a call." "All right." Saint Rue nodded and picked up the call. After passing the phone to his mother, Ruoxing snuggled up to his mother. Lung Ruoxua briefly explained the situation over the phone, and the handsome young man on the other end of the phone guaranteed, "Leave this matter to me. I guarantee that it will be done properly." After putting down the phone, Lung Ruoxua felt her heart clench up even more. Was this what people said? A strong dragon can't suppress a snake in its own territory. Although the forces on the serene blue planet could not even withstand a single blow in the face of absolute power, outsiders like them could not compare to the foundation of the serene blue planet. Of course, unless she reshuffled the power structure on planet Netherblue. However, she was not here to look for a fight, so she really did not have the mood to do so. But no matter what, her son's kindergarten was finally settled. She also believed in the Yang family's ability. This matter was absolutely a small matter to them. It should be known that if the Yang family couldn't even handle it, then the Yang family would be the ones to lose face. As for the entire Yang family, after receiving the news from the handsome boy, they immediately took action. The next day, Lung Ruoxua received a notice to enter the kindergarten. This time, the kindergarten did not even mention filling in the form. On the day the three of them entered the garden, Lung Ruoxua arranged for her father to send them off. In the evening, his father would personally pick up the three of them. However, after 3 days of such transportation, the demon was no longer willing to go to kindergarten. Lung Ruoxua had her suspicions. In fact, on the children's first day of kindergarten and their father's chauffeuring, she had already felt that the demon's emotions were a little off. However, she was waiting for the demon to come clean, so she did not take the initiative to ask, much less ask the children. But now, the evildoer was on strike, so Lung Ruoxua had no choice but to ask. Seeing that his wife was going to ask for the reason, the evildoer explained in anger, "I don't want to be treated like a monkey in the zoo anymore." "What?" Lung Ruoxua was stunned. "Monkey? How could there be such a beautiful monkey? Who dares to treat my husband like a monkey? Are you tired of living?" In the next second, Lung Ruoxua deliberately said in a fit of anger, "It's all because of those love-struck kids at the kindergarten." The evil demon complained. On the first morning he sent his son to kindergarten, he happened to meet many teachers at the gate of the kindergarten welcoming their children. After seeing him, those love-struck fools were all petrified and even drooled as they stared at him. Later, it gradually developed to the point that many female parents also began to look at him like love-struck fools. He was so angry that he was afraid that he would accidentally send these ordinary people to hell. Therefore, he hurriedly put down the 3 children and fled home from the kindergarten in an extremely sorry state. Although being watched like a monkey had driven him a little crazy, those women had not done anything too overboard to him, so it was unlikely that he would send them directly to hell with a wave of his hand. He had thought that the cold aura on his body would gradually make these infatuated women restrain themselves, so that he would not have to complain to his wife, who knew that it had been 3 days, and those hateful women had become even more aggressive. They looked at him as if they wanted to strip him of his clothes. This made him feel offended. Therefore, he never wanted to go to that kindergarten again. Otherwise, he would not be able to control himself and might even destroy the kindergarten in a fit of anger. Hearing the evildoer's complaints, Lung Ruoxua could only try her best to comfort him. From the evildoer's words, she could tell that those love-struck fools had not done anything out of line, so far apart from staring at him with fiery gazes. However, since the other party had already caused trouble for her dear husband, she could not ignore it. Lung Ruoxua immediately made a decision. Tomorrow, she would be the one to send the children to kindergarten. Chapter 3100, Parent-Child Activity 1. After the demon knew his wife's decision, his handsome face showed a trace of hesitation. In fact, he didn't want to be watched, but how could he want his wife to be watched too? If he remembered correctly, there were many fathers who sent their children to school. Looking at his wife's beautiful face, the demon wanted to shout, "Honey, don't go to that kindergarten." But after thinking about it, he still didn't dare to shout it out, because he knew that his wife wanted to go to the kindergarten to take a look for him. How could he drag his wife down at this time? However, she could not get rid of the sour feeling in her heart. No one knew a husband better than his wife. The moment she saw the evildoer's face gradually turning black, Lung Ruoshua knew what he was thinking. Hence, she smiled faintly and said, "Hubby, I'm going to defend my rights tomorrow. I'll let those love-struck fools know that you're taken. So, I'm going to fight for you tomorrow. You have to support me. Support, we must support." When the demon heard this, he suppressed the bitterness in his heart and immediately said, "Be good." Lung Ruoshua touched the demon's head. The next day, when the three knew that their mother would send them to kindergarten today, they were overjoyed. They finally didn't have to see their father's ugly face. After breakfast, Lung Ruoshua drove off with the three of them. The evildoer stood at the entrance like a stone waiting for his wife. He only turned around and returned to the living room after the car was out of sight. Sitting on the sofa in the living room, no one knew what the demon was thinking. He was in a daze and did not say a word. Lung Qingtian and Lung Ruhan were also sitting on the sofa, looking at the demon with interest. These few days, they had already noticed the abnormal behavior of the demon. However, neither of them asked, but not asking did not mean that they were not curious. But for a long time, the genius had no intention of answering their questions. At the same time, Lung Ruoshua had already driven to the vicinity of the kindergarten. From afar, the kindergarten could not be seen yet, but Lung Ruoshua could already feel that there was a traffic jam ahead. Just as she was trying to figure out why the road to the kindergarten was so difficult to walk on, she suddenly realized that her car was surrounded by people. Furthermore, most of them were women of all ages. The scene was spectacular, and this made Lung Ruoshua extremely speechless. Lung Ruoshua opened the car door and got out of the car. When the women who were full of anticipation saw a devastatingly beautiful woman walk out of the familiar car, they were first stunned, and finally, their faces showed a deep disappointment. Seeing their rapid change in expressions, what else did Lung Ruoshua not understand? Why was he so disappointed that he didn't see his idol? At this moment, the three of them also opened the car door and got out. They snuggled up to their mother obediently, and Rue Sheng answered her mother's question. "Mom, these grandmothers are here to see Dad." When they heard the cute baby call her Mommy, all the women's attention was immediately attracted. Then, all kinds of complicated gazes were focused on Lung Ruoshua. Some were scrutinizing, some were jealous, and some were even feeling inferior. At the same time, because of the sudden appearance of their mother, Lung Ruoshua, everyone automatically ignored the words "old grandmothers" from Rue Sheng. After Lung Ruoshua heard Saint Rui's explanation, she smiled gently at the infatuated girls and said, "I'm here to see my husband. May I ask, have you paid the visitation fee? My man won't let anyone visit him." "Mom, they didn't pay." The three's eyes lit up when they heard the visit fee. "I see. Since you've been watching my husband for 3 days, you should make up for the visit fee. Well, I won't ask for too much, just 100,000 a day, or 300,000 nether blue dollars for 3 days. The moment Lung Ruoshua said this, all the fangirls were in a state of confusion. "You want money to take a look? What the hell is this? I've never heard of it." A woman said unhappily, "I have to pay a visit fee to see it in public." "Why not? Don't you need to pay to go to the museum? Isn't that still in public?" Lung Ruoshua replied with a smile. "How can that be the same? We're in the middle of the road." The woman retorted, "What's wrong with the road? The museum belongs to the country, so you have to pay for the visit, right?" Lung Ruoshua asked again. "That's right." The woman nodded in confusion. "By the same logic, my husband belongs to me. Since he's already taken, you can't just look at him for free? If you don't want to pay the visit fee, it's copyright infringement. I can find a lawyer to sue you. Lung Ruoxu's eyes suddenly turned sharp. All the girls were rendered speechless by Lung Ruoxu's words. Although they wanted to refute that the two were different, after thinking about it carefully, they realized that it did make sense. More importantly, if this person before them really took them to court over such a small matter, how embarrassing would that be? It could be said that after Lung Ruoxue had said those words, those who wanted to save face wanted to keep the peace. However, a mere 300,000 nether blue coins was nothing to them. However, there was someone who did not know what was good for her and insisted on arguing with Lung Ruoxue to find out the reason. At that moment, an extremely sexy woman with heavy makeup stood out and said in dissatisfaction, "If you can sue me, then go ahead, humph. The law doesn't say that men have to pay for looking at other people on the street. The law doesn't say that, but it doesn't say that you can look at other people's men for free. And, as you wish, you will receive my lawyer's letter and court summons," Lung Ruoxue said calmly. After that, she took out her phone and dialed a number. She only said, "I want to call the police. Someone is blocking the traffic." Then, he told her the address. Hearing Lung Ruoxu's words, the faces of all the surrounding ladies turned black. The laws on planet Netherblue were very comprehensive, especially when it came to traffic safety. They were very detailed, and it even clearly stipulated that during peak hours, if one blocked traffic for no reason, they would be detained for at least 15 days, depending on the circumstances, and would also be left with a bad record. And now it just so happened to be peak hours. Hence, after Lung Ruoxue hung up the call, everyone's expression turned ugly. All the girls were furious. They never thought that Lung Ruoxue would call the police. This made them feel at a loss. Furthermore, those who could attend this kindergarten were either from rich or noble families. If word of this got out, their families' faces would be completely lost. However, now was obviously not the time for them to settle scores with Lung Ruoxue. Furthermore, the sound of police sirens could be heard from afar. Hence, many of the women could not be bothered to be infatuated with her. At this moment, they wished that they could just disappear from the spot. Chapter 3101, Parent-Child Activity 2. Unfortunately, Lung Ruoxue would never allow them to leave. Since they had already called the police, they could not possibly let the hard work of the law enforcement officers go to waste, right? This was not the code of conduct for a good citizen. After Lung Ruoxue had done something, all the infatuated girls who had wanted to watch were taken away. Without any obstacles, Lung Ruoxue brought the children back to the car and continued driving. After parking the car in the kindergarten's parking lot, Lung Ruoxue swaggered into the kindergarten with the three of them. After sending the three of them into the class, Lung Ruoxue was prepared to leave with a peace of mind. At this moment, a middle-aged woman in her 50s suddenly blocked her path. "Is there something?" Lung Ruoxue raised her eyebrows and asked calmly, "Are you the mothers of Ruoxing and the others?" "I'm the director of this kindergarten." The middle-aged woman introduced herself very politely. "Oh, it was the director. How are you doing?" Lung Ruoxue was also very polite. "Madam Yi, may I have a word with you?" Seeing that Lung Ruoxue was done being polite and didn't say anything else, the director could only take the initiative to speak. "Sure." Lung Ruoxue didn't reject him. She followed the director to her office. When they arrived at the director's office, the director did not know how to speak to Lung Ruoxue. However, Lung Ruoxue was also rather calm. As the saying goes, if the enemy doesn't move, I won't move. Before she knew what the director wanted to talk about, she would not take the initiative to ask. She was not in a hurry anyway. After a long time, the director couldn't take it anymore and finally said, "Madam Yi, I heard that there was a traffic jam in front of the kindergarten. Were you the one who called the police?" "Yep. Besides, there's still some distance to the front of the kindergarten." Lung Ruoxue explained. Can you cancel the police report?" The director was a little conflicted. "You can cancel the police report?" Lung Ruoxue's eyes widened in disbelief as she could not help asking. The director didn't know what to say. Logically speaking, calling the police shouldn't be treated as a child's play, But the area that was blocked wasn't a first-class road. It was in front of the kindergarten. Moreover, someone had reported it. Therefore, as long as the person who reported it didn't pursue it, those people could just treat it as a formality and be released with a fine. Therefore, the key to this matter was completely on this Madame Yi. In addition, among the people who were taken away, there were many parents and some kindergarten teachers. Even if it wasn't for the parents, just the teachers who were taken away were enough to give her a headache. After some thought, the director said, "Madame Yi, to be honest, there were many kindergarten teachers among the people who were arrested. If this matter were to be exposed, it would have a huge impact on our kindergarten's reputation. So, even if you don't think about those love-struck fools, it's best that you don't pursue this matter for the sake of your own children. Otherwise, it would have a bad impact on your 3 children. Oh, really? Would it not be good for my children? Director, are you threatening me?" Lung Ruoshu asked with a smile. "Absolutely not. Just think about it. It's not a glorious thing for a kindergarten teacher to break the law. If our kindergarten's reputation is affected because of this, how can the children studying in our kindergarten not be affected?" The director sighed. "You're right. I didn't want to call the police either. I was forced to do so. Those women, in order to see my man, she blocked the road. If I didn't do this, I would definitely be late for school. I had no choice but to take legal action to solve the problem," Lung Ruoshue said with a hint of grievance. In other words, she was also reminding the headmaster that it was time to discipline those teachers. When the director heard this, he immediately nodded. "I understand. Don't worry. I will discipline them well in the future." When she said this, the director felt a little guilty. When she first saw Mr. Yi, she couldn't help but take a few more glances at him, not to mention those young female teachers. It would be strange if they didn't go crazy when they saw a man who was more handsome than an idol. Therefore, she could understand the crazy behavior of those infatuated girls. However, at this time, in front of Lung Ruokshu's wife, she could only go along with Lung Ruokshu's words. Also, they can't look at my husband for free for 3 days. They have to pay 30,000 yuan for the visit fee. I've already told them about this. If I don't see the visit fee within a week, they'll still take them to court. Director, please pass on this message." Lung Ruoshu nodded her head in satisfaction and continued. The director was dumbfounded by her words. Did she hear wrongly? At this moment, the director could not help but admire Lung Ruoshu. Ruthless. He was really ruthless. Having been in the education industry for so many years, she thought that she had seen all kinds of parents, but she had never seen someone like this. This person was not afraid of offending the kindergarten and all the parents of the students. In reality, Lung Ruoshue wasn't afraid at all. She was also very clear that the director would definitely pass on the message for her. After reaching an agreement with the director, Lung Ruoshue made another phone call to withdraw the report and left in a carefree manner. As for what those love-struck fools would do after they were released, it was not within the scope of her concern. When she returned home, she reported this matter to the demon, grandfather, and the others. Everyone was rather impressed by Lung Ruokshu's use of legal weapons. Lung Ruoshue then proudly told them they all want to be law-abiding citizens. A week later, a portion of the teachers and parents obediently handed over the visiting fees for the evildoer. They really could not afford to lose face like that. Those who didn't send it over didn't think that Lung Ruoshue would sue them in court. Or rather, they didn't think that the court would accept such a matter. However, the court accepted the case. Those love-struck fools who thought they were lucky also received a court summon very quickly. This time, everyone was dumbfounded. If this really happened, their face would be thrown to Mars. In the end, they had no choice but to beg Lung Ruoshue for a truce and obediently paid double the visitation fee. Seeing the love-struck faces of those who had paid the visiting fee, Lung Ruoshue wasn't angry. She only told them, if you knew this would happen, you wouldn't have done it. Many of the love-struck fools who thought that they had been extorted hated Lung Ruoshue in their hearts. They wanted to find an opportunity to find trouble with her. No matter what, they had to make a fool of her. With this thought in mind, some of the teachers and parents of the kindergarten were united. Lung Ruoxue had become their biggest public enemy, but she didn't seem to mind. This made them feel like they had punched cotton. In fact, they had even thought of targeting Lung Ruoxue's children. According to their thoughts, if they couldn't find the fault of the child's mother, then they would find the fault of the children. Such a heavy responsibility naturally fell on the teachers who harbored a grudge against Lung Ruoxue. Unfortunately, the three of them were as cunning as foxes. Some teachers had racked their brains to think of all kinds of ways to bully the three, but they couldn't. Instead, they were bullied by the three of them very miserably. They dared to be angry, but didn't dare to say anything. They could only suffer in silence. The three of them found joy in kindergarten through bullying and being bullied. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. One day, the three of them, who had already gone to and from school alone, came home and told their parents that there was an activity at the kindergarten. When Lung Ruoxue heard this, she immediately asked for clarification. Only then did she know that it was a parent-child activity held by the kindergarten once every semester. It was rather grand, and both parents had to attend. Lung Ruoxue didn't have any objections to this. During this period of time, she was very clear about some people's little tricks, but unfortunately, no matter how they jumped around, she didn't take it to heart and treated it as a training for her sons. To her, as long as the other party didn't cross her bottom line, she wouldn't lay a hand on ordinary people. The demon was also too lazy to care about those clowns, but he was also unwilling to participate in his son's kindergarten activities. "Honey, can I not go?" the demon said gloomily. "Of course not. This is a parent-child activity organized by the kindergarten. If we don't go, or if I'm the only one who goes, the children and parents at the kindergarten may think badly of our children. Do you want them to treat our precious son as an illegitimate child or a child with an unknown father? Hubby, we're going to support our son. In addition, this can also be considered as following the local customs." Lung Ruoxue explained seriously. When the evildoer heard that his son might be treated as an illegitimate child or his father was unknown, he immediately refused. Did he find it easy to get a wife? What right did he have to be ominous? "Honey, let's all go," the demon agreed. The parent-child activity was set to be on the weekend and would last for 2 days. On Saturday morning, Lung Ruoxue and the demon brought the three of them out. This time, they arrived at the kindergarten's parking lot without a hitch. When they entered the kindergarten, there was no longer the spectacular scene of love-struck fools gathering at the entrance. The evildoer was very satisfied with this. However, only Lung Ruoxue was clear about how much influence an idol had on ordinary people. This calmness was just an illusion. As expected, Lung Ruoxue used her divine perception to scan the area and discovered a few women hiding in the dark, peeking at them. However, the other party did not take any further action, so Lung Ruoxue pretended not to know. After entering the classroom, Lung Ruoxue and the demon found a corner and sat down. However, their appearances were too eye-catching. Even if they wanted to keep a low profile, it was hard not to be peeked at. Of course, they could still tolerate peeking from time to time. Not long after, the class teacher of the three students also arrived at the classroom. That form teacher was about 25 or 26 years old and was once a fan of the evildoer. However, after being taught a lesson by Lung Ruoxue, she had become much more restrained. Hence, this time, she only took a quick and furtive glance at the evildoer's position before immediately looking away reluctantly. After explaining the process of the parent-child activity to the parents, the form teacher brought the children and their parents to the field. At this moment, the field was ready. On the first day of the parent-child activity, there was a parent-child sports event for each class. The theme of the sports meet was parent-child, and parents were required to complete it with their children. Many parents were excited about such an event and were eager to give it a try. Only the evildoer felt that such an event was too boring. Chapter 3102. The Competition 1. This was especially so for the competition of the upper years, which had already started. The silly fathers who participated in the competition flew all over the field and completed every sport according to the requirements. They were all exhausted and gasping for breath like dead dogs. Their foreheads were covered in sweat, and their image had really taken a dive. For some fathers who didn't like sports, falling behind in scores wasn't the most embarrassing thing. The most embarrassing thing was that some of them couldn't finish all the events and were already exhausted to the ground. They were then carried away from the field by the medical staff. As long as he thought of that scene, the demon's forehead would have a few more black lines. This was really tormenting people. Was this really a parent-child activity and not an activity to torture the parents? No matter how the demon thought about it, he felt that the kindergarten was deliberately pranking the parents. Was there really a need for this? He felt that with such time, he might as well urge his sons to cultivate more. From this, it could be seen that the master of the nether prison really didn't care about this childish activity. If you have the ability, then get serious. What's the point of playing this child's play? It had to be said that there was a certain distance between the thoughts of gods and humans. In fact, the kindergarten held such activities every semester, mainly to let parents and children interact more, to cultivate parent-child relationships. After all, in today's society, many parents neglected their children because of work, and the lack of care from parents might be a negative factor for children who are physically and mentally fragile. It was with this idea that kindergartens hoped that parents could spend more time with their children and even play games with them. The reason why this parent-child sports event was so childish in the eyes of the evildoers was that most of the sports activities were games. Some games also tested one's physical strength. Therefore, some parents with weaker physiques and less exercise would have a situation of physical exhaustion. The kindergarten had also anticipated this situation, but they still arranged these games in the hope that parents could understand the importance of health and increase their exercise. It could be said that the kindergarten had good intentions, but in the eyes of the evildoer, it was completely unnecessary. He did not even care for his own body. Could a small parent-child sports event change this situation? Dear, you think too highly of yourself. That's impossible. Evildoers felt that they had to walk their own paths and grind their own blisters. Everyone had to be responsible for their own actions, especially adults. They could arrange their own lives, and outsiders really didn't have to point fingers at them. Especially during this parent-child sports day, he felt that he was bullying the other children by letting his sons compete with these children. His sons could completely defeat all the other children in seconds. He could even defeat all the fathers in seconds. At the thought of this, he lost all interest in the parent-child sports event. Not only him, but the three also felt that this activity was very boring. If they had the time, they might as well go home and feed the rabbits. Unfortunately, even if they weren't interested, they would still have to compete. The slogan of the parent-child sports event was participation. Since they were going to participate, it was natural that every child and parent should participate. But fortunately, they could choose to participate in it, either their father or mother. However, most fathers were very concerned about their reputation. So, in the upper grade competition, it was basically the father who participated, and the one who lost face was naturally the father. After the competition for the seniors had ended, it was the turn of the intermediate class. As for Lung Ruakshu's 3 children, due to their age, they were assigned to the beginner class. Hence, the competition for the 3 of them would be held in the afternoon. As for the morning, they were just there to watch the fun. While they watched the others secretly peeked at their family of 5. Every time they saw this family, the father was handsome, the mother was devastatingly beautiful, and the 3 children were so cute that they looked like they had come out of painting. Everyone could not help but sigh. How did this family of 5 grow up? It was really infuriating to compare people. After a short break at noon, the competition for the beginner class officially began in the afternoon. There were a total of 5 beginner classes this year, with about 20 people in each class. There were a total of 100 children and their parents. The competition would be divided into 4 rounds, with 25 children and parents each time. The competition would last about 20 minutes. Because it was the beginner class, it was slightly different from the morning's competition. There were 5 events in the morning, while the afternoon's competition reduced the two most energy-consuming events to only three. The three competitions were divided into 2 people and 3 legs. Stepping on balloons, passing relay, and shooting were very simple. It was absolutely suitable for younger children and parents to play together. It could be a father or a mother, but since the competition in the morning was usually held by the father and the mother was responsible for cheering, when it came to the beginner class competition, the fathers would also do as the Romans do and participate in the parent-child sports event. However, when it came to the demon, under the anticipating gazes of the 3 form teachers, the demon did not stand up. The one who stood out was Lung Ruashue. She was also the only mother who was participating in the competition today. The moment Lung Ruashue stepped out, it could be said that she stood out like a crane among the chickens. In an instant, she had stolen everyone's attention. Although the daddies were very happy to have the chance to compete with a peerless beauty, the moment they thought of how a man was standing behind a woman at such a moment, they could not help but look down on a certain daddy. As for the mothers and teachers present, when they saw that Lung Ruashue was the one who took the lead, they were instantly dissatisfied. However, they soon thought that since this woman was not by their idol's side, did that mean that they could take the opportunity to peek at her without any qualms? At that moment, they felt that it was great that Lung Ruashue was participating in the competition. Who knows, they might even have the chance to strike up a conversation with their idol. Among them, the 3 form teachers were the happiest. Without Lung Ruashue, she could now stand beside her Prince Charming in an open and above-board manner. At this moment, she truly felt the usefulness of being a mentor. Look, my idol didn't object to me standing beside him. The young teacher was elated, and her face and brows unconsciously revealed a hint of lust, but in reality, the evildoer did not notice her existence at all. Instead, it was Rueyes and Rueishin who immediately became alert, standing on either side of their father like little guards. Rueishin also saw it, but he had to compete with his mother, so he didn't have time to care about the vixen getting close to his father. But after seeing the performance of his 2 younger brothers, he was relieved and even gave them a look of appreciation. Before the official competition, Lung Ruashue naturally saw some small actions. However, she didn't care at all, because evildoer didn't need her to worry about him. That fellow was black-hearted. The first round of the race was a 3-legged race. After Lung Ruashue and Rue Sheng were ready, they were unusually relaxed. When the whistle was blown, the mother and son rushed to the finish line without much effort. Their smooth and natural movements stunned many people. Chapter 3103. The competition too. You bastard. When did it become so easy for 2 people to reach 3 feet? Didn't you see that a few of the lower grade students fell down? Why was the child completely fine, and why did the mother and son walk away in such a majestic manner? When they reached the finish line, Lung Ruashue sent a flying kiss to the evildoer before joining her son in the fun. So boring, so childish. Looking at the children who kept falling down, Rue Sheng made a conclusion. Faced with her son's conclusion, Lung Ruashue nodded in agreement. However, when the judge next to them heard the conversation between the mother and son and their expressions, the corner of his mouth kept twitching. He couldn't help but think, if children and parents are all like you too, then wouldn't that be uninteresting and childish? About 10 minutes later, the 2-man, 3-legged race finally ended. The next step was to step on the balloon. The parents and children stood in a circle and tied the ropes around their waists. The balloons were dragged on the ground behind them. Parents and children had to step on other people's balloons. Of course, parents could only step on the parents' balloons. While stepping on other people's balloons to prevent themselves from being stepped on, they also had to protect their children's balloons from being stepped on by other children. With such a rule in place, some parents simply carried their children in their arms or carried them on their shoulders. The balloon stepping competition lasted for 5 minutes. When the competition officially started, the small circle became the domain of Lung Ruashue and Saint Rue. The 2 of them were agile and fast. Some of the parents did not even have time to react before Lung Ruoxue and Saint Rue stepped on the balloons and crushed them. By the time they realized what was going on and decided to join forces to fight the enemy, they could not even catch Saint Rue, let alone Lung Ruoxue. More importantly, even if they caught Saint Rue, it would be useless because the rules stated that parents were not allowed to bully children. However, Lung Ruoxue and the rest would not be able to bully her. Not only that, but the balloons behind him were also exploding. Very quickly, all the parents except Lung Ruoxue were eliminated, but Lung Ruoxue's balloons were still there. In the remaining time, it was up to Saint Rue to show his skills. Basically, all the children who participated in the competition were bullied by him like frightened little quails. Their tears were stuck in their eyes and did not dare to fall, making the parents' hearts ache. After the balloon stepping competition finally ended, Lung Ruoxue and her son had become a thorn in the eyes of the parents. The last round was a passing relay and shooting, which was still 5 minutes long. Within 5 minutes, the pair of children and parents who completed the most passes and shots would win. At first, before the last round of the competition, the parents had made up their minds to get the highest score at least once. But when the competition really started, the participating fathers were shocked to realize that there was no hope of getting the highest score at all. That abnormal mother and son could not be defeated. Disappointment, anger, confusion, and all sorts of complicated feelings surrounded the hearts of the participating fathers. They were so sad and angry. Wasn't this He Shengliang, He Xingyu, with such a powerful opponent? How could they still play around happily? At this moment, their thoughts of playing with the devastatingly beautiful woman had long disappeared without a trace. Their only hope was that the other party would make a mistake, even if it was just once. Whoa. Unfortunately, while wishes were beautiful, reality was cruel. Once the 5 minutes were up, Lung Ruoxue immediately stopped and left the stage. There was no need to ask the judge for everyone to guess the results. Unlike her fathers who were listless, Lung Ruoxue was in high spirits. However, this kind of game was too easy for her and the children. She felt that it was better to play it only once. However, someone did not want her to play it only once, just because she had 3 children. When she heard from the 3 form teachers that their family had to participate in 2 more of such childish competitions, Lung Ruoxue's expression turned sour. She had 3 children, but wasn't it normal to only participate once? You had to give the other parents a chance, right? Lung Ruoxue felt that she was very kind. At the very least, she didn't want to deal a blow to all the parents who were participating in the competition. That would be too cruel. However, the 3 head teachers told her that there was no other way. The school rules stated that unless the child was sick, all children had to participate in this activity. Of course, the teacher also suggested that if she didn't want to participate in the competition, she could let the child's father participate. At the mention of the child's father, the female teacher was very depressed. She had been standing beside him for more than 20 minutes, but she didn't dare to strike up a conversation with her male god. She even enjoyed the baptism of his cold air. She even wanted to cry to death. Boo-hoo! What a good opportunity. How could she let it go to waste? She was starting to look down on herself. And the reason why she had to let the other 2 children of the Yi family participate in the competition, other than the school rules, was also for her own selfish reasons. According to her thoughts, even if she didn't dare to hit on her male god, she could at least look at his elegant demeanor when he was playing the game. But how could the evildoer do as she wished? Our evildoer has always put on a cold and aloof front. Other than his own wife and children, he doesn't even look at anyone. Of course, his expression also made it clear that he would definitely not participate in such a childish game. Since it was the kindergarten's rule, Lung Ruoxue could only continue to lead the children into the battle. However, because the evildoer had never participated in a competition before, he was despised by all his fathers. He had also become a useless pretty boy in the eyes of his daddies. However, the demon did not care about this. When Rui's and Ruikio's matches ended, the mother and children instantly became the targets of the parents and children present. 3 sons, 3 competitions, and Lung Ruoxue had brought her children to the top with perfect scores. Her dazzling red results blinded everyone's eyes, and no one dared to look directly at her. In the final round, Lung Ruoxue and her own child became the champions without any suspense. After the first day of the parent-child activity ended, Lung Ruoxue and the demon brought the three of them home calmly. At the same time, the other parents were still depressed and could not recover until the next day. The second day's activity was in the form of a field trip. The main purpose was to cultivate the children's ability to survive in the wild and adapt to changes. Therefore, after sending the children and their parents to a deep mountain, the kindergarten teachers left. As for the final task of the children and their parents, it was to find a farm in the mountains and complete a cooperative planting between the children and their parents. After 2 days of activity, the children and parents with the highest scores in each grade would be able to get a chance to travel around the sea. This was the material reward for the 2-day parent-child activity. Although parents might not care about the trip around the sea, it was different for children. This was because this was an opportunity that the children had obtained through their own hard work. It was a kind of recognition and reward for their performance. Therefore, the parents also paid more attention to it. Chapter 3104, Small Farmyard 1. It was precisely because of this mentality that the kindergarten was able to hold such parent-child activities once every semester, and it lasted for a long time. On the day of the event, other than Lung Ruoxue's family, who seemed to be very calm as if they were out for an outing, the other parents were very nervous. Not only did they bring many items in big and small bags, some parents even brought wireless navigation devices. Looking at their reactions, then looking at herself and the demon who were empty-handed and not even carrying a bag, while the three of them were carrying a small bag, Lung Ruoxue suddenly felt that she had been very irresponsible. However, she couldn't say that her sister had a storage ring and didn't need those things. So, she and the evildoer could only stand aside and silently endure the rolling eyes of some parents who did not know the truth. Of course, most of the eye rolls came from women. Most of the women would think that she was an irresponsible mother. The evildoer had also received some disdain from his fathers. The fathers' thoughts were the exact opposite of the mother's. They all felt that the evildoer had not been a good father. Fortunately, both Lung Ruoxue and the demon had already trained their skin to be very thick. Hence, they were able to remain as calm as ever under the watchful eyes of the crowd. As for the three children, they received sympathy. Many parents felt that these three cute little children were too pitiful. Their mothers didn't love them, and their fathers didn't love them. Fortunately, the three of them didn't understand what the others were thinking. Otherwise, they would have shouted, "I don't need you to meddle in my business. This is how we get along in our family. Besides, they're not little kids. Do they need to rely on their parents for everything?" The three self-proclaimed independent eyes did not need anyone's sympathy. That was an insult to their noble bloodline. The strong didn't need the pity of others, and the future strong would be the same. As the saying goes, the poor's children grow up early. So what if it was a child of a god? The three of them knew very well that from the moment they became the children of their parents, their birth had determined that they could not be like ordinary human children, who would surround their parents all day, act coquettishly, cry, and have runny noses. They were future powerhouses, and their starting point was high from birth. Thus, they were destined to be extraordinary from a young age. At this moment, deep in the mountains, due to the strong wind that blew from time to time, some of the timid children were already crying in fear. Only 3 of them looked normal, and they didn't even throw themselves into their parents' arms, which made the 3 of them even more extraordinary. Many of the parents present had noticed this. They were quite envious, jealous, and hateful of this child. How did he raise this child? How could he be so calm and composed? Although they were envious, the gap between their children and other people's children was not just a little bit. Thinking of this, many parents who hoped for their children to become successful made up their minds. In the future, they must not dote on their children without principles. Otherwise, what would they do if they raised their children into the second generation of useless people? After this parent-child activity, many children would live in misery in the future, and the three of them were not aware of it at all. This was the aftermath of the parents seeing the gap between them and other children. What were the three of them doing at this time? They were already urging their parents to set off. The three of them didn't want to stand there and receive the so-called sympathetic gazes. That would make them feel like they had failed as gods. Would a future powerhouse need the sympathy of ordinary humans? Lung Ruoxue and the evil demon had wanted to leave for a long time. Now that their sons were urging them, the couple turned around and left with their sons. This mountain was located on the outskirts of the city and was considered a barren mountain that had not been developed by humans. Although Lung Ruoxue did not understand why the kindergarten would choose this place as the parent and child activity venue, she was certain that there was definitely no manner here. Or rather, there was no proper manner here. If the so-called manner that the other party was talking about was the one she had scanned with her divine sense, then it really couldn't be considered a manor. At best, it could only be considered a small farmyard. At the thought of this, Lung Ruoxue was a little speechless. Did they get played by the kindergarten? Leaving these children and their parents here and not caring about them. Wasn't he afraid that they would encounter large beasts in the mountains? After her divine sense scan, she knew better than anyone else that there were many fierce beasts in this mountain. She even heard from the beasts language that some of them were saying that a human fool had come to their door again. He wondered how the parents would feel if they knew that they were treated like fools by the beasts. In any case, she didn't want to treat a certain beast as a fool. Out of humanitarian concerns, Lung Ruoxue kindly turned around and reminded the parents before she left, "Be careful. There should be many large beasts in this mountain. Don't disturb them." Originally, Lung Ruoxue had good intentions. Unfortunately, a considerable number of parents didn't believe her words. According to the parents' thoughts, this was just a barren mountain. So how could there be a large, ferocious beast? If there were, how would the kindergarten dare to let them come here? Wouldn't that be sending them to their deaths? It was precisely because they did not take Lung Ruoxue's warning seriously that the parents did not take the potential danger to heart. Furthermore, there were many small paths in the mountain. In order to prove their strength, only 6 pairs of parents chose to follow behind Lung Ruoxue and her husband. Most of the parents did not take the same path as Lung Ruoxue's family of 5. Seeing how willful they were, Lung Ruoxue could only let them be. Along the way, the couple took the 3 children and looked around as if they were on an outing. They were very relaxed. The parents who had chosen to follow them could not help but scoff in their hearts when they saw them like this. They couldn't help but think to themselves, don't they know that this is also a competition? He actually had the leisure to look at the scenery. Due to their competitive nature, there were quite a few times when the parents of the 6 pairs walked in front of Lung Ruoxue's family. Lung Ruoxue and the demon didn't mind at all. When it was time to play, they would play. When it was time to rest, they didn't delay at all. On the other hand, the 6 pairs of parents were exhausted after a short while because they had walked too fast and too hurriedly. At this time, Lung Ruoxue's family of 5 had overtaken them. Just like that, Lung Ruoxue and the 6 pairs of parents took turns to walk in front. In the end, the 6 pairs of parents couldn't move anymore and could only follow behind slowly. However, at this moment, Lung Ruoxue and the demon brought the children and walked faster and faster. They didn't show any signs of fatigue. The dog-tired parents who followed behind them were really angry and jealous, but they really couldn't keep up with the other party, so they could only stare helplessly. Very quickly, Lung Ruoxue and the demon brought the 3 of them and disappeared without a trace. The parents who had been left far behind only had one thought in their minds at that moment, and that was that his physical fitness was really good. He walked in the mountains as if he was walking on flat ground. It can't be compared. By noon, Lung Ruoxue and the demon had already brought the children to the small farm. Chapter 3105 Small Farmyard 2. The owner of the small farmyard was a man in his 30s with an ordinary appearance. When he saw Lung Ruoxue, the demon, and the 3 of them, he was clearly stunned for a long time before he reacted. "Are you here to participate in parent-child activities?" The man was both shocked and surprised. He really didn't expect that a child's parent would find this place so quickly. Moreover, this couple gave him a feeling that they were quite unfathomable. This was really too incredible. However, even though he was surprised, he did not show it on his face. Lung Ruoxue, on the other hand, glanced at the man and nodded. Although the man in front of her was an ancient martial arts practitioner, she still did not think that he could protect so many parents in this barren mountain full of wild beasts. If something happened, he would not be able to split himself up. Even though Lung Ruoxue had such thoughts in her heart, she also knew that this had nothing to do with her. Hence, after nodding her head, she directly asked, "We're here now, so we should be in time for lunch. The children are all hungry." Hearing this, the man was a little confused. From what he heard, this pair of parents had specially brought their children here early to make a living. Wiping the sweat from his forehead, the man weakly replied, "Sure, but it's in the middle of nowhere. There's really nothing to entertain us with. It's okay. There are many ferocious beasts in the mountains. Just one of them will be enough for our family of 5. Lung Ruoxue laughed evilly, but she could not help but complain in her heart. Damn it. Did he think that she did not know about this man's relationship with the wild beasts in the mountains? Obviously, she knew that the man had a black panther, and that panther was doing well in the mountains. As such, the man's movements in the mountains were unimpeded. Sure enough, the man's expression changed when he heard this. Then, he said with a constipated look, "That's not very good. Animals are the best friends of humans. You're right, but we're hungry now. As the host, you should at least provide us with a meal." Lung Ruoxue said with a smile, I'm afraid you won't be used to my simple life here." The man hesitated. "It doesn't matter, we're not picky," Lung Ruoxue said indifferently. Hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, the man knew that he couldn't reject her. He could only brace himself and go back into the house to get his own food. He really didn't prepare food for the parents. This was because he didn't expect parents to find this place so early. According to his calculations, the earliest parents would find this place was in the afternoon. Now, he had miscalculated. In a short while, the dining table in the living room was filled with several large bowls. After a quick glance, Lung Ruoxue looked at the man and said, "Is that all you're eating? You're really poor." The bowl was filled with vegetables, and there was not even a single piece of meat. "The conditions in the mountains are simple. I can't do anything about it," the man said, somewhat embarrassed. "Hubby, go and hunt a beast." Ignoring the man's words, Lung Ruoxue directly spoke to the demon. "All right," he said. The demon nodded and turned to leave. His son was still growing, and he really couldn't just eat vegetables. Wait a minute. Seeing that his handsome father was really going out to hunt, the man quickly stopped him. He could not let the animals in the mountains suffer at the hands of this demon, or else his leopard son would blame him when he came back. "My sons are still growing." The demon frowned when he saw that he was being stopped. There's still some meat at home. He'll go get it." For the sake of the animals in the mountain, the man could only offer up the leopard son's food. The meat was still raw when it was brought over. Ruoxue took a look and quickly brought it in front of his mother, saying proudly, "Mom, have some barbecued meat." "Yes, there are still many fresh vegetables in the yard. Son, go and pick some." Lung Ruoxue nodded and instructed. The 3 of them turned around and ran. When the man saw this, he hurriedly chased after her, shouting as he chased, "Don't randomly pick. Some of the dishes are not mine and can't be touched." Then, a series of banging sounds came from the courtyard. When the 3 of them returned to the living room with fresh vegetables in their arms, their faces were full of joy and satisfaction. The man, on the other hand, looked dejected. These 3 little demons. Boo-hoo. They were his weekly ration. They had all been plucked by them. However, this was not what made him the saddest. What really made him sad and angry was that he, a man, could not defeat 3 little children. Sob, how could he live? I can't play with him anymore. The man was filled with grief, anger, and sorrow. The way he looked at Lung Ruoxue and the evildoer was filled with sparkling water droplets, and he looked as if he had been wronged. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxue could only smile helplessly. I just took your order. Do you have to do this? It has nothing to do with the vegetables. I just want to know, who are you? The man suddenly said in a serious tone. We're the parents of our children. Didn't you already ask? Lung Ruoxue smiled. A straightforward person does not resort to insinuations. You know I'm not asking about this. The man said gloomily. From the behavior of the three children, this couple was definitely not ordinary people. How would I know which one you're asking? Besides, curiosity killed the cat. Sometimes, knowing too much is not a good thing. Lung Ruoxue warned. Yes, dear, you want to know too much. Rui Qiao suddenly interrupted. When Lung Ruoxue heard her son's baby-like voice, she couldn't help but laugh. The man's face darkened. This little kid was really unlikable. It was obvious that he was being laughed at by a little boy. Unfortunately, he wasn't very good with words, so he didn't know how to react. At this moment, a howl came from not far away, and the three's attention was immediately attracted. There's a kitten, the three of them said in unison. Then, the three of them ran out of the courtyard happily. Wait, isn't that a kitten? Before the man could finish his sentence, a few mournful howls were heard. Immediately, the man was shocked and chased after them. Outside the courtyard, a large black leopard with shiny fur was pounced on by three children. At first, when the man saw the situation, he was very worried for the three children. He was not worried that the leopard's son would deliberately hurt the three children, but that the three children would be accidentally injured by his son's sharp claws. However, when he saw that his son was obviously at a disadvantage, he simply did not know what to say. That was a leopard. It was the ferocious Black Panther. But now he was being pressed down on the ground by the three of them like a house cat. His poor son had become their plush toy. What was even more infuriating was that his son could not resist. What the hell is this? The man became even more indignant. He felt that today was not a good day for him and his son. They should not have come here. The man regretted. He regretted it so much that his intestines turned green. Originally, he didn't have much to do today, but he knew that his son hadn't been back here for a long time. So he wanted to take the opportunity of the kindergarten activity to bring his son back to see his old friends. Who knew that he would actually meet these little fiends? Why were they so unlucky? Chapter 3106, Small Farmyard 3, my son, little ancestors, please let my poor son go. Seeing that his son had been pressed down, the man couldn't help but plead for his son. This kitten is your son? Hearing the man's words, Saint Rue asked curiously. Yes, I raised it. Also, it's not a kitten. It's a Black Panther. The man corrected. It's a kitten, and it's much more obedient than my cat. We like it. Rue Sheng said with a smile. All the cats in his house were elders. Their mother had never allowed them to bully them, so they didn't dare to bully them. This cat was really to their liking. Look at this soft and smooth fur. It's like silk. It feels great. The three simply couldn't bear to part with it. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue and the demon walked out from the courtyard. The moment they saw their parents, the three of them immediately requested, Mom, let's take this kitten home and raise it. Hearing the three little demons' words, the beautiful black leopard's eyes rolled back and it fainted. Lung Ruoxue looked at the leopard's human-like actions and found it rather interesting. An animal that had yet to gain sentience could understand human speech, which was enough to prove its spirituality. Of course, it could also be that this leopard had lived with humans since it was young. But no matter what, this leopard was clearly different from the other beasts. Sons, this kitten is taken. We can't bring it home. Lung Ruoxue then said with a stern expression. Although she doted on her sons, she didn't wish for them to develop an overbearing personality. Furthermore, her sons didn't lack anything, so there was no need for them to snatch away someone else's favor. Sure enough, the three little faces all drooped after hearing this. Although you can't bring this kitten home to raise, you can invite them to our house as guests. Lung Ruoxue continued. Their mother's suggestion made their eyes light up, and they became lively again. As the big brother, Rue Sheng even looked at the man shyly and said, Uncle, can you bring the kitten to my house as a guest? Don't worry, we won't bully it. They'll bring Bauer along after this event. Faced with the little boy's clear and expectant eyes, the man really could not refuse, so he could only force himself to say it. But then he thought about it. If he went to the mysterious couple's house, maybe he could find out some of their secrets. With this thought, he immediately looked forward to it. The black leopard, who had been pretending to faint, actually fainted after hearing what his human father said. Oh my God, the leopard didn't want to live. After taking care of the three, the man finally had a chance to save his son. However, when he touched the Black Panther's body, he realized that his son was in a bad state. Did he really faint? Oh my God, wasn't her son too timid? With great difficulty, the man picked up his heavy son and walked toward the room with heavy steps. Lung Ruoxue and the evildoer brought the three of them and followed behind. After a few short steps, the innocent Rue Jean could not help but ask, "Mom, isn't that kitten pretending to be unconscious? Why was the uncle still hugging it? Don't you think it's heavy?" When Rue Jean said this, his voice was clear and melodious. The man who had already entered the room could not even pretend to be deaf and mute. After placing the black leopard on the bed, the man could not help but look at his silly son with sympathy, thinking, "My son, have you met your nemesis?" At the same time, Lung Ruoxue and the demon brought three of them into the room. Lung Ruoxue glanced at Black Panther, who was lying on the bed, and said to her son seriously, "Sons, this kitten is really dizzy now. Do you see? This is because she's too timid and got scared." The three listened to their mother's words and nodded solemnly. Their clear eyes were full of sympathy. In fact, they really didn't do anything to the timid cat. They just played with it for a while, so they really couldn't understand how the kitten fainted from fear. She's really not the usual kind of timid. "Mother, it's too pitiful that it's so timid. Why don't we give it some spiritual intelligence?" After thinking about it, Rue Jean requested. He felt that if he gave the kitten intelligence, the cat might be smarter. "You'll have to ask this uncle about this." Lung Ruoxue pointed at the man who was standing at the side. At this moment, as the man listened to the conversation between Lung Ruoxue and his sons, he became more and more confused. Now, he was shocked to realize that he seemed to have discovered some shocking secret. So, he did not feel good at all. What was he trying to do? "Uncle, will that do?" Seeing the man in a daze, Rue Jean tugged at the corner of his clothes and asked. The man didn't know how to answer. Could the enlightenment that the other party was talking about be the one written in the ancient book? Would he? Looking at Lung Ruoxue, the man's eyes were filled with helplessness. At this moment, he urgently needed someone to answer his questions. Lung Ruoxue could not be bothered to waste her breath. She took out a pill and handed it to the man. "If you want your son to gain sentience, then feed it. Will there be any side effects?" The man was a little excited, but he still asked cautiously. "Side effects? If it accidentally speaks in front of outsiders, it might be captured by some research institutes and cut into pieces." Lung Ruoxue thought for a moment and said, "Arg, you can still speak?" The man's face was filled with disbelief. Was this medicine really that magical? Wouldn't that be even more high-end than what the ancient book said? The ancient book only said that animals with spiritual intelligence could use their spiritual power to communicate with ancient martial arts powerhouses. If he could really speak now, it would save a lot of trouble. However, this matter was just as the woman in front of him had said. If outsiders knew about it, the consequences would be very serious. However, he had raised the little leopard himself and had always treated it as his son. Naturally, he hoped that his son would be able to achieve something in the future. In addition, the lifespan of ordinary animals was limited. He really did not want the little leopard to be unable to accompany him in his long life, because this leopard was not only his family, but also his most trusted partner. "Sure," Lung Ruoxue said with certainty. The man became even more excited when he heard this. After receiving Lung Ruoxue's confirmation, he no longer hesitated. He pried open the black leopard's mouth and stuffed the soybean-sized elixir inside. After a while, the black leopard woke up. Immediately after, it began to roll around on the bed in pain. Blood kept oozing out of its pores, mouth, and nose. The man was so frightened that he quickly stepped forward to help it, but he was stopped by Lung Ruoxue. "Don't touch it. It has to get through this on its own," Lung Ruoxue reminded. Chapter 3107, Little Kitten 1. After hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, the man immediately lowered his hands obediently by his side like a baby, not daring to move at all. However, the pained howls of Bao's son on the bed reached his ears without any hindrance, causing his entire heart to be twisted together. His heart ached so much that his eyes were filled with tears, but he did not dare to move, so he could only watch his son, who was already covered in blood, roll around and howl in pain. His heart, felt as if it had been cut into pieces by a knife. About half an hour later, the black leopard finally stopped rolling around and howling. The man was relieved to see that. However, after waiting for a while, his leopard son was still lying on the bed, motionless. He couldn't even feel his breathing. This time he was scared again. How could it be like this? How could it be like this? "My son, are you going to leave your father like this?" Sob, sob, sob. The man sobbed in despair. Hearing the man's moans, Lung Ruoxue was speechless. This guy was really... The demon simply turned to look at the ceiling. Otherwise, he was afraid that he would not be able to resist the attack. The other three opened their eyes wide in curiosity, looking at the man who was no longer young and crying. "Uncle, don't cry. The little cat is fine." Rue Jean, who had been staring at the man for a long time, couldn't take it anymore and reminded him. "Whoa, he's not breathing. How can he be fine?" Wait, you said it's fine?" The man replied to himself, and only managed to react to what Rue Jean was saying halfway through a sentence, and quickly asked, "I'm fine." Rue Jean nodded his head seriously. But it's not breathing." The man asked in disbelief. "She's breathing, but it's too weak. Uncle, you can't feel it." Rue Jean said with a smile. The man was a little depressed. Although he was happy to know that Bao's son was fine, he didn't know why he couldn't be happy, because he found himself too useless. Even a little boy could sense that his son's breathing was weak. He was an ancient martial arts master, but he couldn't sense it at all. How could he bear this? More importantly, he didn't think that the little kid in front of him was lying to him. This made him even more conflicted. Sob, sob, sob. What was this little doll? She was really too impatient. As the man waited in self-pity and self-loathing, the black leopard, which had dried blood on its body, finally moved its fat claws. The man didn't even dare to blink when he saw it, afraid that he was hallucinating. After a while, the black panther slowly opened its eyes. Its slightly wet, deep blue eyes were still a little dazed. A few seconds later, its eyes clearly reflected the man's figure. Then it suddenly pounced on the man, hanging on him as it sobbed loudly, "Daddy, sob, sob, sob. These 3 human cubs are bullying your precious baby." The prolonged voice and the similar crying made Lung Ruoxue's face turn black. She secretly regretted awakening this leopard's intelligence. Could this fellow not be so mushy? After a short while, Lung Ruoxue deliberately put on a straight face and said unhappily, "Human babies are not young. Please remember." "Then what should we call it?" "That's what we all call him." The Black Panther asked carefully. It could clearly sense that the woman in front of it was not in a good mood. "It's our child, our baby," Lung Ruoxue corrected him. She didn't care how these animals called human children in private, but her child must not be called a young cub. The leopard learned from this. A good leopard knows its mistakes and can change. Then it turned to the man and said, "Sob, sob, sob. Daddy, a human child is bullying your precious baby." Lung Ruoxue was speechless. The words "darling" gave her goosebumps, especially when these words came from a leopard. However, the man clearly didn't think his son was that mushy. He coaxed him with a pained expression, "Baby, it's okay. Don't be afraid. They said that they won't bully you anymore." "Oh, really?" the Black Panther asked fearfully. "Of course it's true." The man promised. "Uncle, do we say we won't bully it?" At this moment, Rue Jean asked without giving him any face and with a confused look. Of course. Didn't you invite us to your house as guests and promise that you won't bully my baby again? The man's eyes widened. I see. Rue Chin's pitch-black eyes turned. Actually, he really wanted to say that he was just being polite. As for whether or not he would be bullied, it really depends on the person's wisdom. However, he was smart enough not to say these words out loud. Otherwise, I'm afraid this father and son would not be willing to go to their house. Hee hee. Rue Jin, who was laughing in his heart, did not say anything. The man saw this and said to his silly son, Treasure, did you hear that? They won't bully you anymore. You really won't bully me anymore. The black leopard couldn't believe it, and it timidly looked at the three with its watery eyes. Don't worry, we'll only treat you well. The three of them patted their chests and promised. Hearing this, the Black Panther's heart that had been in its throat finally relaxed a little. Suddenly, it froze for a moment, then turned to the man and said, Dad, do they understand what I said? It obviously hadn't reacted yet. Treasure, you are the one who can talk. The man touched the silly leopard's head and reminded him. How is this possible? I'm a leopard. You've always been speaking leopard language. When did you learn human language? The silly leopard's face was full of shock and disbelief. I've given you intelligence. You can already speak the human language. Lung Ruoshua smiled. Ah, the Black Panther cried out in excitement. At this moment, it was simply impossible to describe its joy. When it was done barking, it then remembered to jump down from its father's back and pounce towards Lung Ruoshua. It then hugged Lung Ruoshua's leg tightly and said, My benefactor, you're my second parent. Lung Ruoshua could not help but feel speechless. The word benefactor was so ancient. Who did this silly leopard learn it from? Benefactor, I have no way to repay your great kindness. I can only devote my life to you. Just as Lung Ruoshua was deep in thought, the leopard, whose reaction was obviously slower by half a beat, started to flatter Lung Ruoshua nonstop. It did not even notice that at this moment, one of the evildoer's expression had already turned very dark. Originally, when he saw his wife being hugged by a leopard, his face had already darkened by half. Now, when he heard this stupid leopard say that he wanted to devote himself to his wife, his entire face was blacker than ink. His clenched fist made cracking sounds. Just when he saw that a certain leopard was about to be in big trouble, the man said with a bitter face, Baby, don't you want daddy anymore? Yes, but wanting a father doesn't affect me from repaying my kindness. Benefactor, please accept me. Let me work like a cow or a horse for my benefactor. The silly leopard pleaded with a sincere look. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.